In the year 199X, the world was engulfed in the flames of nuclear war. The oceans dried up and the land became barren. Life as we knew it was all but extinct. Yet, humanity somehow survived. A group of bandits murder and plunder money as we can clearly see that the world was once again plunged into an age ruled by violence. The bandits are known as the Zed, and they received word that their scouting party was taken out. Just then, one of the Zed members' heads blows up from the inside. A man named Kenshiro, Ken for short, walks into town looking for water, only to be captured by some villagers. A girl from the village brings him some water and food as he states that he feels much better now. Now the girl hasn't spoken since her parents were killed, so Kenshiro performs a spell on her to remedy the situation. Now Ken is not one of Zed's men. However, he has bullet wounds on his chest that form the Big Dipper, which one of the elders claims is the Stars of Death. Zed's men arrive in the village as Ken rips the bars on his cell to release himself. Zed looks to draw out Ken by ripping off the head of the little girl. Ken then arrives on the scene with a look of anger on his face. He then takes out 3 men simultaneously with a roundhouse kick. He then performs a series of moves on the leader in rapid succession. Now this fearsome art of assassination is known as Hokuto Shinken, the divine fist of the North Star. Practitioners of this art can focus all their energy into a single fist, before striking the body's hidden channeling points, thus allowing them to damage the victim not externally, but from within. Zed looks to exact his revenge on Ken. However, Ken says that he's already dead, as the bandit's body blows up from the inside. And with his work done in the village, Ken decides to leave as a boy named Bat decides to follow him. An old man attempts to get seeds to his village, but a bunch of local bandits start to hassle him. Ken drops in on the situation and calls the main one a slaphead. The bandit shoots an arrow at Ken, but he manages to catch it with only his 2 fingers. He then throws the arrow in the man's right eye, as he helps up the old man. Now with the rice seeds, the old man says they could have a sustainable food source, so Ken decides to help him out and carry him to his village. After returning to the village, Spade and the other bandits decide to make their move. The old man gets impaled during the commotion. Ken looks to help him out, but his arms are caught by some steel chains. He then redirects an axe to cut off the head of one of the bandits. Now with Hokuto Shinken, Ken uses 100% of his strength, whereas normal humans can only use about 30% of their strength. Ken then finishes off the man with Rocky Mountain splitting wave. The leader looks to retaliate, but Ken snaps his arms in the process. He then performs a move where the man only has 3 seconds to live, and in these 3 seconds, he implores him to reflect on his life. The bandit then explodes in half, as Ken then makes a grave for the old man that died so tragically. Now the king of the bandits hears about Spade's death, so he decides to brutalize the messenger. Ken then reads a message from the king on a dead man's body, and this makes him rather furious. Diamond, one of the king's men, looks to put an end to Ken, but Ken says that he's rather slow. He then splits Diamond's face in half as he sets his sights on the king. Ken then makes his way to the Southern Cross, i.e. the King's City, as we see a man with Wolverine-like claws brutalizing many people. Ken then steps forward, announcing that he has something to ask. He bends the man's spine backwards, and says that he only has 1 minute to live. After interrogating the man, he finds out that the king uses a deadly martial art, and he's gathered enough information to figure out who he's up against. Captives are then marked with the bloody cross as they become slaves to the king. Upon seeing this, Ken realizes that Shin must be the king, and he's the man who put the 7 scars on his chest. Elsewhere, Shin tells a woman that his beloved Ken lives, but Ken's fists have no chance against Shin's heart. Ken then arrives at the main building, as Shin says that it's been a while. Shin, I come back from the depths of hell just to see you again. Now to see Yuria, Ken will have to go through the heart, or as Ken calls him, the pig. You know, cause he's rather chubby. Ken is unable to reach Heart's channeling points. We then find out that Shin practices Nanko Saiken, the holy fist of the South Star. The 2 martial arts are like yin and yang. They're polar opposites of one another, or 2 sides of the same coin. Ken is pleased to see that Yuria is still alive, but she seems unfazed by his presence. Ken performs a series of kicks on Heart, making his belly rupture from the inside. Now 1 year ago, Shin confronted Ken and Yuria, and claimed that power is justice. And because of this, the strong can take what they wish. Now it turns out that Ken and Shin had the same teacher, but at that time, Shin had come to reject his master's teachings. Determined to seize Yuria for himself, Shin engaged Ken in battle, and he ended up getting the upper hand. In victory, Shin claimed that Ken lacked desire,
and desire leads to power. Now to prevent Ken from dying, Yuria said that she loved Shin. Shin proceeded to laugh at Ken because of this, leaving Ken utterly devastated. In the now, Ken catches Shin's arm, saying that obsession has led him to this moment. Now it seems like Ken has surpassed Shin, so Shin decides to eliminate Yuria. Enraged by this, Ken punches through Shin's hand to land a blow on his chest. And with Shin defeated, Ken reveals that it was rage that beat his obsession. Shin then reveals that Yuria never accepted him after their first battle. And even after conquering the Southern Cross, Yuria's feelings remained unchanged. So she decided to commit suicide by jumping off of a building. And because he couldn't make Yuria his, he will now kill himself before Shin can kill him with his fist. Now even though the two were enemies, Ken still digs him a grave. And he's doing this because they love the same woman. Ken and Bat then arrive at an oasis, a place where they have water and plenty of food. A large man wants to eat for free, so he threatens the owner. Ken decides to subdue him and says that if he wants to eat, he needs to work like everyone else. While collecting their reward, some malicious police officers break into the establishment. Bat then informs Ken that they have Rin from the previous village, the girl that helped out Ken in the first chapter. Now it turns out that the officers believe that they are part of a superior race. I mean, they kind of look like Nazis, so I mean, you could kind of put that together. Now to reproduce their superior race, they start stealing women from around the area. Now when the fathers of the daughters attempt to save their children, the officers make an example out of them by cutting their heads off. Ken has definitely seen enough, so he uses a pair of nunchucks to take out several officers. And by striking specific channeling points, he makes one of the officers cut off his own head. And with this, Ken and Rin are reunited. Now it's not all roses. One of the girls screams in terror because she just lost her father. Ken then touches a specific channeling point on the girl to calm her down. It basically just knocks her out, but you know, his heart's in the right place. Ken then heads to God's Land to take down the fanatical officers. He walks in nonchalantly when they're training and claims that he's the god of death. The Mad Sarge chucks a sharp object at Ken, piercing his skin on contact. With several needle knives in Ken, it looks grim, but Ken merely flexes his muscles as they get pushed out of his skin. Mad Sarge commands his men to take him out, yet Ken's power is simply too much for them. The Mad Sarge attempts to take him out with his knife, but Ken dodges flawlessly and even puts the Sarge on his back. Now with Ken's back turned, Mad Sarge attempts to ambush him, but as it turns out, you know, you get the drill, he's already dead. On his way to the Colonel, Ken encounters a slew of new enemies. He takes care of them with ease as the Colonel steps forward. Now we learn that the Colonel loathed his superiors, and because of their foolishness, they eventually got themselves killed. The Colonel's men, however, were spared, and that leads him to believe that they are part of a master race, that they are chosen by God. Now the Colonel is able to read Ken's movements, almost like he's predicting them, and this allows him to slash Ken's knees. The Colonel throws his blades at Ken, but Ken not only dodges them, he destroys them. He tells the Colonel that he lost everything, so he no longer has any objectives. Ken throws a myriad of kicks at the Colonel, but the Colonel manages to dodge them all. Ken then clears his mind of all intention, and he's doing this to prevent the Colonel from reading his movements. This allows Ken to take down the Colonel, and it's all thanks to the assassin blood of the Hokuto Shinken, the very blood that is coursing through his veins. Ken uses his body to shield Rin as the Colonel discovers that he's now blind. He then finishes off the General in brutal fashion, as Rin runs into Ken's arms. Later on, Ken saves a kid from a fatal fall, as the child believes that he must be God. Upon finding out that Ken destroyed God's Land, some local thugs want him to join their gang, but he's not having any of it. The kid from earlier enters the bar, begging for Ken to help his village. Now the boy knows Bat, and he needs someone strong to help dig a new well. A man with a cigar then claims that he found a new oasis. Toyo excoriates Bat when they enter the village, as she then thanks Ken for lending assistance. Now the kids were all abandoned by their parents, so Toyo took them in and cared for them. Taki, the young boy, steals some water from a neighboring village, but because it was owned by the thugs, he ends up getting shot in the heart. Ken brings Taki and the water back to the village, as Toyo laments that he was only 7 years old. Ken finds a new source of water for them, but implores them to keep it a secret from others, as it will cause a lot of commotion. Lord Jackal is made aware of the water source, but he knows of Ken's prowess, so he wants to bide his time. Some scouts make their move on the water, but Ken has no patience for their deplorable behavior. Now Ken believes that if he stays in the village, chaos will follow. So he takes his leave with Bad and Rin. With this opportunity, Lord Jackal invades the village, as Granny shoots a grazing shot off of his head. He reveals dynamite on his body, and says that the kids will blow up if she shoots him again. He then yanks the gun away from her and stabs her in the chest. As payback for shooting him, he'll now hang the kids one at a time in front of the old woman. Now just before the first kid dies, Ken grabs onto the thug that's strangling him and starts to strangle him with a rope. After strangling him to death, he takes out another one who thinks highly of himself. Jackal's men then light dynamite on the kids as they all run off. Toyo sacrifices herself helping out one of the kids. And with this, Ken vows to hurt the thugs to the bowels of hell. Ken then performs a move on the barkeeper that will kill him in 1 month. Now if the barkeeper takes care of the children in that time, Ken will subsequently return and cure him. Later, he performs a move on one of Jackal's men, and instructs him to deliver a message to Jackal personally. When the underling returns to Jackal, his body explodes, and Jackal takes this as a message that Ken is challenging him. Elsewhere, Fox, Jackal's right-hand man, slices off the hands of several villagers. While he takes a leak, Ken bursts out from a cliff to batter him up. Fox attempts to act defenseless to lure Ken into his trap, but Ken doesn't fall for this simple trap. No, he grabs onto a large boulder and tosses it at him. He then performs a blow on Fox's back, and with this, he determines that Jackal is heading to the villainy prison. And with a series of fluid kicks, Ken takes down Fox for good. With the realization that Fox is gone, Jackal is in the uncomfortable position of being hunted down by Ken, something that is quite foreign to him. Ken then begins his assault on the crew, as Jackal blames Fox for this development. Jackal then feigns an apology to get the jump on Ken, but Ken simply punches his arm back. Understanding how strong Ken is, Jackal decides to release a devil to beat him. Unfortunately for Jackal, the devil resents him for locking him up in the first place, and this is all it means to prevent the monster from hurting him. Nevertheless, Ken sees through this little act. The devil proves to be surprisingly fast, which gives Ken a little bit of trepidation. He recognizes the devil's technique as the Rakken and Nyoken, the fist of the Arhat Deva king. It's an ancient Indian art of murdering that dates back over 5,000 years. The devil then uses wind pressure to send Ken flying back into a wall. However, Ken's Tenru Kokyu Ho only reveals itself when he goes into a static position. And now that they've witnessed it, they must all die. The devil then squeezes onto him with his bare hands, but Ken breaks himself free. He then performs his 7-star points of death of the North Star, and with this, the devil's ribs snap into his body. And eventually, this makes his innards explode outwards. The devil then grabs on the Jackal, as Ken drops a stick of dynamite on the ground and walks off in epic fashion. I mean, seriously, it looks like it's out of an action movie. Elsewhere, a man who looks remarkably similar to Ken poses as a girl to take out some bandits. Afterwards, we find out that he wants to take out Ken. Ken then meets up with Bad and Rin, and he finds out that if he can help a village with some thieves, they can take care of some children. Inside the village, Ken comes across a girl named Mamaya, but he thinks she looks like Yuria. Mamaya then throws a ninja star at Ken, and is rather impressed with his reflexes. Ray, the man who's aiming to kill Ken, then says that if Mamaya is his, then he should be careful that another man doesn't take her away. Ray then sneaks in on Mamaya in the bath, and she's not too pleased with this. She tries to attack him. She chases him down as Ken takes down some bandits attacking the village. Ray witnesses Ken's divine fist of the North Star, which makes him quite shocked. He then reveals that he will kill the man with the 7 scars on his chest. The bandits then hold up one of the children as a hostage, and with this, they threaten to slaughter the entire village. They slice up Ko, and say that the same thing will happen to the women and children of the village. Surprisingly, it's revealed that Ko was Mamaya's own sibling. She cries over his grave as she remarks that it was his 15th birthday today. Ken then looks to eradicate the entire gang, yet he's surprised to see that Ray has the same idea. Ken decides to provide some assistance, as the 2 martial artists eliminate the cavalcade of foes with ease. Ken then performs 1,000-hand destructive fist of the North Star, and with this, the bandits are thoroughly dispatched with. Now Ray tells Ken a man with 7 scars attacked his village, and subsequently he killed his parents, and that's why he vows to kill that very man. Irie, his younger sister, is presumed to be dead, but he refuses to believe that. Ken then wonders what Ray would do if he had the 7 scars on his chest. But Ray just merely thinks that this is a joke. I mean, there's no way that Ken would have 7 scars on his chest, right? Ken returns Ko's necklace to Mama Ya, as he warns her that Boss Fang is incredibly dangerous. Now, Mama Ya's parents founded the village, so she urges the people to prepare to defend what is theirs. Now, Boss Fang is absolutely furious that his fellow clansmen died. He calls them his family. So because of this, he wants to search out the relatives of Ken and Ray and get some payback. Now, Ray sees his sister in Mama Ya, so he doesn't want her to recklessly lose her life in battle. Although Ray says that she'll die if she comes, Mama Ya still decides to help out. Boss Fang then approaches some thieves, the ones that are holding Irie captive. The leader attempts to smash his face for his insolence, but Boss Fang remains unfazed. Fang then pulverizes his head with a series of headbutts, as his underlings secure Irie. While Ken's crew is camping, the 3 of them are visited by Irie. Ray attempts to get her attention, but she seems resistant to this. After confirming that it's him, she reveals that she poisoned her eyes the day that she thought she lost everything. Ray then moves in to embrace her, but that's when Boss Fang pulls her away on a rope, and says that she is now at his mercy. He cuts into Irie's chest, as he releases a blood-hungry Madara on Ken. Ken then strikes a channeling point in Madara's cheek, preventing the beast from biting people to death. He then kicks the beast in the mouth, as Boss Fang wonders if Ken is actually the god of death. Boss Fang informs Ken that Madara's claws can tear through stone. Ken then bends the monster's hand backwards, and pulverizes his head with his fist. Boss Fang orders Madara to withdraw, but that's when Ken informs him that he's already dead. To prevent Boss Fang from killing Irie, Mama Ya pretends to be Ken's fiancée. Mama Ya will thusly take Irie's place, so that Ray can have peace of mind that his sister will be safe. Now, Mama Ya attempts to use this opportunity to ambush Boss Fang, yet it turns out that he's quite strong, and with both women in his possession, he throws them to his minions for torture. The minions thusly tie them up, and throw knives at them as if it were some kind of game. Ken says that he's only here to kill Boss Fang, so one of the underlings aims to test him. Now, if he lays a single finger on him, they're gonna kill Mama Ya. But Ken doesn't hesitate in killing him, so Boss Fang looks to execute Irie straight away. Boss Fang then proposes to spare the girl if Ray fights Ken, and for the sake of his sister, Ray attacks with absolute ferocity. Yet Ken refuses to fight back. Ken doesn't want to fight Ray since revenge only brings emptiness. Boss Fang then cuts into Irie, so Ray gets more serious in his plight to kill Ken. Irie then bites her own tongue while Mama Ya attempts to jump on a spear. And the reason that they're doing this is because they don't want Ray and Ken to fight each other. Instead, they want them to save the village. Ken then assumes the Holy Perfect Circle stance, and implores Ray to go all out. Ray will employ the Dragon-destroying Tiger of the South Star, while Ken uses Tiger-striking Dragon of the North Star. Now after they go after each other, it seems like Ray has achieved the decisive blow. Ken collapses onto the ground first, yet Ray collapses shortly afterwards. And with this, Boss Fang implores his minions to chop them up. The two then start obliterating the minions as Ray reveals that they struck specific channeling points on each other so that it would appear that they were dead, but not really dead. Boss Fang then uses his secret technique to make his body as hard as steel. "Let's see how that body of yours holds up against this steel girder," says Ken. The girder has no effect on Boss Fang, so it's now time for Ken to use his fist. He hits specific channeling points on Boss Fang to turn his muscles into flab, allowing him to do significant damage with the steel girder. With only 5 seconds left to live, Boss Fang gets desperate, but Ken turns his head into mush. Afterwards, Ken pushes Irie's Ken-made channeling point, and this restores her vision. Now with the village saved, Ken reveals to Ray that he's the man with 7 scars on his chest. Ray, however, cannot believe that Ken was the man that destroyed his village. And with this, there's no issues between the two of them. Elsewhere, a man with 7 scars on his chest, just like Ken, starts brutalizing some villagers, and he's imploring them to say his name. But it turns out that he's not really Kenshiro. He's merely using Kenshiro's name to instill fear in others. Kei entrusts Ray with watching Bad and Rin, as he sets out to take out one of his 3 non-biological brothers. The fake Ken then brutalizes some villagers, as the real one comes by with his shirt off to show his scars. He reveals that the fake Ken is really Jagi, and he used to be Ken's older brother. Ken subdues the bandits as he says that Jagi's hatred for him is the only thing that keeps him going. Jagi then decides to torture a kid who is a younger brother by tying a large rock to his ankle. Ken finds this so reprehensible that he says even hell is too good for Jagi. Ken returns to the village, as he finds the kid's older brother with an intense look of murderous intent on his face. This reminds him of his days with Jagi, specifically their training sessions together. Though Ken was more talented than Jagi, he feigned defeat so that his older brother wouldn't have his ego bruised. Ken's master told him that kindness would only bring tragedy one day. Ken then allows the older brother to shoot him, as he says he'll pass his pain on to Jagi. He then tells Jagi to pick a location, and to choose very well, since it will be the place that he dies. Jagi then takes Ken to a private area where they can battle uninterrupted. In the past, Jagi was furious that Ken was chosen to be the successor of the Hokuto Shinken. Now the Fist of the North Star is passed on to one and only one successor, so Ken must make sure that it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. Jagi could not accept this quietly, so Ken made sure to put him in his place. In the present, Jagi pretended to be Ken so that he could entice him into another duel. And he's doing this because he's lived with hatred in his heart ever since he lost to him in the past. Jagi then employs Fist of the North Star techniques, but it's no match for Ken's technique. Now Ken has ended Shin's life, and he aims to put a stop to Jagi's reign of terror as well. Jagi spills oil in the arena, and lights it with a match to hopefully burn Ken alive. He then reveals that he tricked Shin into going after Yuria, and it was all a means to eliminate Ken. Enraged, Ken punches the ground, causing Jagi to fall into the resulting crevice. "Jagi, say my name," exclaims Ken. Jagi attempts to use Nanto Senken on Ken, but he promptly receives a boot in the face. Ken then hits Jagi's Ryogan channeling points, making all his nerves hypersensitive to pain. Ken then lands a critical blow as Jagi's head bursts open in a most gruesome fashion. Before dying, yeah, he's still alive at this point, Jagi warns Ken against the two older brothers, to which Ken is pretty surprised that they're still alive. Ryokan, the previous successor of the Fist of the North Star, was not blessed with a son, and as such, he adopted 4 sons so that one of them could carry on his legacy. And of these 4 sons, there's Ken, Jagi, Toki, and Raoh. Ken now wants to focus his efforts on finding Toki first. After taking out a bar thug, Ken asks a man about the Village of Miracles. Now Toki was the savior of the village, and that's because he could cure permanent ailments with just the touch of his hands. But he eventually turned into a murdering lunatic who referred to the people as guinea pigs. Elsewhere, we find out that Toki wants to use his 2 hands to reinvent Ken. He wants to reinvent the Fist of the North Star. He then immobilizes a former heavyweight boxer with a precise blow to the forehead. He then meets up with Ken to explain that he wants to use Hokuto Shinken to relieve the world of suffering. He then goes back to torturing the former heavyweight boxer, as we can see that he's truly a vile man. Toki's specimen hunting party then wants to place a bet against Ken, but Ken wants to make things interesting. If they're gonna bet, he wants them to bet with their lives. They're gonna have an arm wrestling contest with saws on the table to raise the stakes. One of Toki's lackeys wins in a rather convincing fashion, as the loser screams in pain. When Ken takes his turn, he bends the man's arm completely backwards, breaking the bone. After smashing another lackey against a pillar, he demands to be taken to Toki. A mother and father beg for Toki to save their dying child. After stabilizing the child, Toki says that he will now kill the father. He then tosses a sword at the wall, as it's revealed that Ken was hiding there while using one of the lackeys as a shield. Ken then reveals that Toki killed the child, as he throws a flurry of punches at his older brother. As it turns out, Toki is much stronger than Jagi, as he perfectly reads all of Ken's movements. Now it turns out that Toki used to be a kind-hearted soul, but that all changed when some savages brutalized the village that he saved. That's when he realized that his dream was nonsense, and that the true path of the Hokuto Shinken was that of an assassin. Toki kills the father by hitting a specific channeling point, and this leads Ken to leap at his older brother in a fit of rage. Again, Toki does well to parry this. We then learn that Toki saved Ken from some falling logs in the past. And I gotta say, this is kinda similar to that moment in Berserk when Guts is training with some logs by a waterfall, so kind of a cool little reference by Kentaro Miura. But unlike the past, it's now his savior that wants to kill him, leaving Ken no choice but to kill yet another brother. Ken cuts Toki across the bridge of the nose, as he then vanishes from plain sight. Desperate, Toki uses the boy's mother as a shield to prevent Ken from killing him. By hitting a specific channeling point, Toki restrains all of Ken's movements, allowing him to punish him as he pleases. Ray bursts onto the scene as he states that Toki is an imposter,
and his real name is Amiba. Amiba continues to toy with Ken as he demands praise for his genius. However, Ken flexes his muscles and proceeds to stand up with an absolute look of ferocity on his face. "If the real Toki had struck those points, I could never have countered," says Ken. In a flashback, we learn that the real Toki was a kind-hearted man. Amiba, on the other hand, used his reputation and turned him into a murderous demon. Ken then performs the remaining remorse walk fist, a technique that forces his opponent to walk backwards involuntarily. And with this, Amiba walks straight off of the building and explodes in midair. When Ray found out that Amiba was the fake Toki, Mama Ya went out to search for the real one. Unfortunately for Mama Ya, anyone who's searching out the real Toki is to be killed on the spot. Ken comes onto the scene, as Mama Ya reveals that Toki is being locked up in a place called Cassandra, and these scumbags are the executioners. Ken puts the guards to sleep, and that's not an innuendo for killing them, he actually put them to sleep. He then rizzes up Mama Ya by helping her off of the ground. Unfortunately, he tells her to go home, as this is his problem to deal with. Despite her unrequited feelings, she still follows Ken to Cassandra, the city of wailing demons. Now it is said that once you become incarcerated here, that you'll never come through the gates alive. In a flashback, a nuclear explosion went off, so Ken, Toki, and Yuria search for shelter from the radioactive ash. Unfortunately, there was only room in the shelter for 2 more people, so Toki decided to push Ken and Yuria in so that they may be saved. 2 weeks later, his body was not long for this world, so he thusly abandoned his claims to the Hokuto Shinken. Elsewhere in the present, the warden rips one of the convicts to shreds with his dual whips. Toki, who's usually indifferent, begins to smile, as he seems to sense the presence of his long-lost brother. And sure enough, Kenshiro, along with Ray and Mama Ya, approach the legendary prison. Ryuga and Fudo will not allow the trio to step foot in the prison, but Ken slashes their faces with ease, as he informs them that he sees their eyes are brimming with sadness. Because of this, the two decide to open the gates for Ken, as Ken says that these gates will never be closed again. The warden then makes his appearance, as a group of prisoners carry him towards Ken. He then has his eagle peck at Mitsu, Ryuga and Fuga's brother. But before the eagle lands the death blow, the warden cuts off his beak with his whip. He wants Mitsu to suffer a little longer while he kills Ken. The warden then attacks Ken with his whips, but Ken ties the ends together and says he'll show him what real fear tastes like. The warden then shows him a graveyard of prisoners who unsuccessfully challenged him, along with the prisoners whose lives were wagered on those battles. He then pulls out the horns on his helmet, revealing multiple whips that will now be aimed at Ken. The warden restrains Ken with his whips, as he executes the way of the Mongolian conqueror. Now things look pretty bleak for Ken, but Toki is confident that Ken won't be defeated so easily. We then see Ken stand up and claim he'll be burying the warden after this battle. The warden continues his attacks, but Ken seems to be avoiding them with ease. To prevent this, the warden deploys spikes to prevent his dodging. But this is perfect for Ken, since he's done playing around. Ken then stops the warden's attacks with only 6 fingers. He then uses a technique that allows him to break all the ligaments in the warden's shoulder, rendering it completely useless. The warden attempts to headbutt Ken, but he's sent flying back with a flurry of punches. And with this, the warden explodes into a mess of blood. And because of his efforts, the impregnable city of Cassandra had fallen, and the cries of the demons had been silenced. Mitsu leaps into his brother's arms as the other prisoners rejoice at their newfound freedom. Kenno's royal guards then look to put a stop to their little celebration. Now Kenno is the end of the century conqueror, and Cassandra was built to imprison and execute all those who oppose him. Ken then scares off the royal guards, as Ryuga and Fuga make an effort to break out Toki. The royal guards cannot allow this, so they activate a mechanism to crush the brothers. Unfortunately, the two perish because of this, but because of their determination, they kept the mechanism from fully closing. Saddened by their deaths, Ken vows to eliminate the evil from this prison. Now, the warden, who happens to still be alive, I have no idea, says that Ken and Toki must not meet. And with this, he finally falls to his death, or at least it seems like he's dead. Now, the royal guards are futile against Ken, so they threaten to kill Toki before he reaches him. Ken is not fooled by their ruse, so he eliminates the guards in short order. A wall by the real Toki begins to shatter, as the two guards look to kill him. Toki then catches their blades with his fingers as Ken emerges from the wall to greet his older brother. Toki then uses Compassionate Fist of the North Star to ensure that the two guards will die peacefully and free of pain. They exclaim how good they feel as their bodies then explode at the seams.
It's kind of a weird scene, to be honest with you.
Now Toki's body has grown weaker over the years, so he allowed himself to be captured since he knew Ken would come. Now Keno has stolen every martial art that he can get his hands on, and has subsequently killed the masters and their families. Both Jagi and Amiba were taking orders from Keno, and as it turns out, Keno is actually Raoh, the eldest of the four brothers. Mamaya will now look after Toki as Ken and Ray search out Raoh. In the past, Raoh and Ken were tasked with using their art of assassination to kill a tiger. Now Ken was able to subdue the tiger without any resistance, as the beast accepted its own death. Raoh, on the other hand, paralyzed the tiger with fear. It was absolutely scared for its life, and Raoh even took its head in the process. Now Raoh told his master that he would use the Fist of the North Star to reach the heavens, and if the gods wouldn't accept him, he'd fight them too. In the present, Toki explains that him, Ken, and Raoh all loved Yuria. To them, she was the embodiment of their youth. I mean, goddamn, does every man in this series love Yuria? I mean, Jesus! Toki sees the Death Star next to the Big Dipper, which means that he only has 1 year left to live. In the past, Raoh commanded Yuria to leave Ken and to love him instead. Toki vowed to fight Raoh if he didn't release her, but Raoh reminds him that everything in the world will eventually be his. In the now, Yuria can see the Death Star too, which makes Toki quite nervous. Seeker, from Raoh's scouting party, looks to take advantage of Mamaya, but Ken comes in to put a stop to this. Now Ray is elsewhere heading to Irie's village, as he also notices the Death Star up in the sky. Ray then comes upon a battered bat, as the boy warns him that Rin and Irie are in danger. Irie panics that they'll be sold into slavery, but Rin reminds her that they still have Ken and Ray to count upon. Unfortunately, a bandit breaks into the house and smacks Rin across the face. Now because she refuses to pledge allegiance to Raoh, she'll be burnt alive. Ray interjects himself into the affair, as he's absolutely pissed by how the thugs are treating Rin. Elsewhere, Ken's group comes across hoof prints that are the size of an elephant. Surely only Raoh rides a horse that's this large. A man posing as an old woman attacks the group, but Ken takes him out with ease. Because of Rin's heroism, Irie and the other villagers decide to fight back against Raoh's men. One of Raoh's men swallows a bunch of gasoline and starts blowing fire in Ray's direction. Just then, the powerful and imposing Raoh trots onto the scene with his massive horse. Now Ray lights the fire from within on the big boy, as he then sets his sights on Raoh. Now Raoh wants to confirm if Ray saw the star next to the Big Dipper, and he did. And because of this, Raoh encourages him to attack. Ray attacks with no hesitation as Irie, Rin, and Bat look extremely concerned. Ken then arrives on the scene as he sees Raoh holding up the unconscious Ray. "You arrived at last, Kenshiro," exclaims Raoh. Raoh tosses Ray at Ken, as the latter is dead set on taking down his eldest brother. In a flashback, Ray witnessed Raoh's terrifying aura, a sight that made beads of sweat pour down his face. Ray, nonetheless, attacked with self-sacrifice offset fist, but it was no match for Raoh's superior technique. Ken did not see the Death Star like Ray, so it is not time for them to fight yet. Ken doesn't back down though, so Raoh sends him back with a pulse of powerful aura. Now when Ken releases his aura, it frightens Raoh's horse, and this is the first time this ever happened to the horse. "You can witness my progress with your death," announces Ken. The two martial artists give off aura so powerful that everyone in the resulting area is utterly terrified. After their first exchange, the two both draw blood on the other's faces. Raoh reveals that Ken would have died if not for the arrow that Ray shot at him. He reveals that he struck Ray's Shinketsu's channeling point, and he only has 3 days left to live. An indentation then forms on Ken's chest, as he coughs up copious amounts of blood. Raoh then reveals that his fist only fears one thing, the Fist of Toki. Elsewhere, a big oaf attacks Toki with a pair of steel rods. Toki subdues the oaf, as he explains to Mamaya that Raoh is still more than Ken can handle right now. This is why Toki was kept separate from Ken, so that Ken wouldn't learn the technique to defeat Raoh. Despite the odds, Ken punches Raoh's horse across the face, and implores Raoh to step down. Toki says that Ken has less than 1% chance of defeating Raoh, and he must survive to watch over these times. Raoh is callous beyond compare. In fact, it was him that killed their adoptive father, Ryoken. In the past, Raoh refused to obey the laws of the Hokuto Shinken, so Ryoken obliged himself to close his fist permanently. Ryoken used a technique that mimicked the Big Dipper, and this allowed him to take advantage of Raoh's 7 blind spots. Before Ryoken could close his fist, however, he suffered from a heart attack, thus allowing Raoh to finish him off for good. In the now, Raoh dismounts from his horse and says that death is the only thing awaiting Ken and Toki. Ken embraces the challenge, but Toki strikes a channeling point that makes Ken's body go still. Toki will now take on Raoh, and he implores Ken to watch this fight closely. Toki strikes a stunning blow on Raoh's neck, as the latter is surprised by his strength. Raoh then stabs his own foot, along with Toki's foot, so that the latter can't run away. Rin cries for Ken to save Toki, as Ken begs for Toki to release him. Raoh understands that Toki's sick body can't handle the blood loss, so he only needs to wait at this point. Now Toki wants his death to serve as Ken's strength, as he walks the path of the successor. Toki manages to strike a critical blow on Raoh's abdomen, but this allows the latter to catch both of his arms and effectively restrain him. Mamaya wants to shoot Raoh with an arrow, as he'll retaliate if she does so. Ray then announces that he loves Mamaya and begs for mercy. Raoh then redirects the arrow at Mamaya. Nonetheless, Ken comes in to use his body as a shield. It was the heart that broke Toki's shackles, Raoh. It's not the heaven you will grasp, but the death omen star. Ken goes absolutely berserk as Raoh pulls out the dagger from his foot. The two exchange critical blows, as Toki remarks that much blood will be spilt in this fight. Eventually, so much blood is spilt that there's only enough for one last attack. After their final attacks, they've reached a standstill, with no clear winner. So Toki implores them both to stand down. Now despite being in severe pain, Raoh refuses to kneel down. And with this, he rides off, as they surely will do battle on another day. Ray then begins to scream from the excruciating pain coursing through his body. And with only 3 days left to live, all that's left for him now is to decide how he wishes to die. Mamaya makes her way to Medicine City, a savage place that creates miracle drugs for Raoh. Now with Raoh's reign of terror over, Lord Gelf, the dog whisperer, looks to start his own reign of terror. Toki then warns Ken that Mamaya has also seen the Death Star, as Ken decides to make his way to the Medicine City. Irie wants her brother to live for himself in these last 2 days that he has left. Ray's body continues to fail him, as Ken comes along to give him a helping hand. Elsewhere, Mamaya gets captured by some thugs in Medicine City. Because Mamaya hurt a dog that was attacking her, she's gonna receive tenfold the amount of pain that the dog received. Ken and Ray arrive to kick one of the thugs onto a bed of spikes. While Ray helps out Mamaya, Ken remarks that it's sad that he doesn't know that she also saw the Death Star. Ken literally just glares at the dogs menacingly, and they all run away in fear. Ken then beats down the boss, as Ray explains that he used a martial art known as Hokuto Shinken, which, as we already know, means he's already dead. Ray then sees Yuda's brand on the back of Mamaya's shoulder. It turns out that she has the same brand carved over her heart, which means she's condemned to eternal fighting. We then see Yuda, who's obsessively focused on his physical appearance, and he also believes that there is no one stronger than him. And bro, I mean, this guy looks exactly like a roided out Griffith. I mean, god damn. Now when he sees that one of the women has a scar on her forehead, he discards her since she's no longer perfect. Now on Mamaya's 20th birthday, Yuda and his men came to her village and stole her away. Yuda then tore Mamaya's parents to shreds, as the village was helpless to do anything to save her. And since that day, she ceased being a woman and instead turned into a warrior. Yuda and Ray are both practitioners of Nanto Saiken, so Ray resolves himself to finish this himself. Yuda, the ideal man to crown my end, says Ray. Ken asks Yuda's men where Yuda is, as he tosses one of them into a brick wall. The two eventually make their way to Gale, Yuda's field officer. Now Yuda is not here right now, as Ray remembers that Yuda's star is the one of enchanting, i.e. the star of betrayal. And before we move on, I just want you guys to consider something. Yuda looks like a girl, is very beautiful, carved a scar into a woman's chest, and his star is the one of betrayal. I mean, I feel like Miura took this template and used it for Griffith's character. He betrayed Guts at the Eclipse. As a result, the brand of sacrifice got carved into Casca's chest right by her heart, and Griffith has long, beautiful hair and is just considered, you know, beautiful beyond compare compared to anyone else. So
It just feels like Miura really took that template from Yuda and used it for Griffith. Anyway, back to the story. Ken performs a move onto Gale so that he feels the same amount of pain as Ray, which makes him reveal that Yuda is in Blue Town. With the Star of Death growing brighter, Ray needs to hurry up to Blue Town. Mama Ya then gives some medicine to Toki, as he instructs him to give it to Ray. Now as it turns out, Yuda is not in Blue Town right now. He stayed behind to get a glimpse of Ken's fist. Now, most people label Yuda's star as the one of betrayal, but he says it's actually the incarnation of beauty and strategy that moves the very universe itself. He then eliminates his own field officer as he feels confident that he has the knowledge necessary to defeat Ken. Toki then tells Ray that there's a pressure point that can prolong life. However, it will increase the pain exponentially, and it could even drive him insane. Now he has that option, or he could take the medicine that Mama Ya got for him. And it's medicine that would give him a quick and painless death, that way he wouldn't have to suffer anymore. Yuda then confronts Mama Ya as the latter becomes quite scared. Toki then hits the pressure point, as Ray feels a deluge of pain through his body. Irie can't take the screams of Ray anymore, so she urges her brother to take the medicine already. Ray then emerges from the room as his hair is now all white. Word then comes in that Yuda captured Mama Ya. Ray makes his way there, and takes out 2 of Yuda's guards with ease. Yuda then reveals that Mama Ya saw the Star of Death, and with this, Ray resolves himself to die in her place. Ray cuts into Yuda's face as the latter screams in horror that his beautiful face is ruined. In the past, Yuda was fascinated by Ray's beautiful movements, and from this moment onward, he vowed to make him pay one day. Now Yuda betrayed the Nanto Saiken, and subsequently made a pact with Raoh. In the now, Yuda is absolutely flabbergasted by Ray's strength, since he's supposed to be on death's doorstep. Ray continues brutalizing Yuda as he says that he'll never understand what true love is. Realizing that he's outmatched, Yuda blows up the dam to flood the city. One of Yuda's men then looks to pour poison into the water supply. However, Ken performs a series of moves on him to put a stop to this. He then pulls out a huge slab of rock to kill some more of Yuda's men, and he uses this same rock to plug up the dam to prevent the flooding. Yuda then takes advantage of the terrain to slice up Ray's body. Now Yuda wants to go in for the finishing blow. However, Ray beats him to the punch and plunges his arms into Yuda's shoulders. Yuda then admits that Ray was better than him, as he takes Ray's arms and shoves it into his own heart. Ray, the only man in the world whose worth I recognized. At least, I'm in your arms now, says Yuda. Ray bids Yuda farewell as copious amounts of blood spurt out of his head. Now Ray's body is literally bursting at the seams, as he implores Mama Ya to find happiness. Ray then bids everyone farewell as he walks into a house and accepts his fate. Now Ken will never forget Ray, and from this day onwards, he'll live for him. He then lights the house on fire as Mama Ya reveals that she no longer sees the Star of Death. Raoh then goes to meet with Souther, the strongest man of Nanto Saiken. Slaves build a mausoleum for Souther, i.e. the Holy Emperor, as Raoh says he'll be back soon. A thug steals some children to work for the Holy Emperor, as Ken comes in to put a stop to this. The man attempts to gun Ken down, but after a whack in the face, his head explodes. Some of Souther's men look to take Ken in, but Shu of the South Star White Heron Fist takes them all out. People call me the valorous blind leader, announces Shu. Shu decides to fight with Ken, and even uses his secret technique, Yugen Sho. Shu draws blood on Ken, yet this was the first time someone blocked his technique. Ken then simulates Shu's technique to pound him onto the ground. Bad and Rin then put a stop to things, as they claim that Shu saved their lives. Shu then reveals that he was Ray's best friend, and was waiting for Ken's arrival to put a stop to the Holy Emperor. Ken then wonders if he's met Shu before, because he seems rather familiar. After the two take out some of Souther's thugs, Ken feels confidence he knows who Shu is. In a flashback, Ken participated in a sparring match with Raoh and Souther watching closely. Now Shu was Ken's 10th opponent, and Shu ended up beating him quite handily. Instead of killing Ken, however, Shu stated that the boy had a great light of potential within him. And to preserve Ken's life, Shu had to sacrifice his own eyes. Ken recalls who he is, as Shu is happy that Ken has become so strong over the years. They head back to Shu's base, as we find out that Shu fights for the sake of the children. Now Souther's star is the brightest of the Southern Cross, and to him, nothing else matters except for himself. They secure more rations from the Holy Empire. However, this was a trap because the food was poisoned, and this just makes their situation even more dire. A thug from the Holy Emperor threatens to burn some of the civilians, so Ken steals his flamethrower and burns him instead. "Well, well, you've grown up, kid," says Souther. Two brothers throw their daggers at Ken, as he dodges back and forth without getting hit. He then hits a pressure point on the both of them and makes them lose their sense of perspective, and this causes them to kill each other with the knives. Raoh then receives word that Ken is going to fight Souther, to which Raoh says that it's too soon. Souther attacks Ken, as it's clear from the outset that he has the speed advantage. Ken then hits a blow on Souther's critical pressure points, meaning that he only has 3 seconds left to live. Unfortunately, Souther is unaffected after the 3 seconds, as blood then spurts out of Kenshiro. "I am the Emperor. I am completely different from you. God gave me this immortal body." Souther ends up winning the battle, as we later see Ken chained up in the mausoleum. Shiva, the son of Shu, then knocks out some of the guards in an effort to save Ken. While they escape the mausoleum, Ken coughs up copious amounts of blood. Shiva then decides to sacrifice himself by serving as bait, so that Ken can escape with his life. After Shiva blows himself up, Ken is traumatized by this development, but he realizes that he must live on so that his sacrifice wasn't for nothing. Now things look pretty desperate for Ken. It even looks like he's gonna die. But in a surprising turn of events, Raoh comes in to save him. He states that Ken must unravel the mystery behind Souther, so that he, Raoh, can defeat him. Ken rests up for a bit, as Shu implores him to provide the eulogy for his son Shiva. Souther's men ambush Shu's hideout, so Shu implores Bad and Rin to escape with Ken in a secret underground channel. Shu then confronts Souther, and says that if he can't defeat him, he'll transform into a Sura so that they both cease to exist. Shu then finds himself surrounded by a cavalcade of enemies, but he manages to take them all out with precise movements. He then reveals he doesn't sense attacks with his eyes or ears, but rather with his heart. He makes a beeline for Souther, but the Holy Emperor catches his fist before he does any damage. Souther then cuts the nerves in Shu's legs, rendering him all but useless. Now Souther's minions prepare to cut him down, as Shu cries out for Ken's help. Ken then feels a sudden surge of energy, as he makes his way towards Shu with a look of anger on his face. Ken destroys anyone that gets in his way, as the others are flabbergasted that he's still alive. Ken then flexes his muscles to make the wounds on his chest close up, as Souther's minions consider him a real-life monster. Raoh then receives word that Ken is to do battle with Souther again, but he says that it's much too soon. Toki then walks in and informs Raoh that he knows Souther's secret. Souther then commands Shu to lift the final stone up to the top of the mausoleum, and if he happens to drop it, well, all the children are going to be slaughtered. Now Shu's wounds are taking their toll, as he barely wobbles up the steps while he coughs up blood. "Even if I run out of strength, I'll carry it with my spirit," says Shu. Rizzo wants to wrap up Shu's wounds, and Souther says that he'll allow this. However, only on one condition. If he wraps up Shu's wounds, Rizzo's gonna have to sacrifice himself and his family. And obviously, Rizzo can't do this. Elsewhere, Raoh and Toki arrive on the scene, as the latter will focus his efforts on opening up a path for Ken. Even though Toki's body weakens day by day, his techniques still remain as potent as ever. Shu then makes his way to the summit, as he senses that Ken is on his way. And sure enough, Ken makes his way onto the scene in all his glory. Toki says that if they do not allow Ken to pass, then him and Raoh will punish anyone who is responsible. Upon reaching the top, Shu's feet are shackled up by some guards, which means that he'll eventually have to drop the rock and all the children are going to be slaughtered. Though his time is short, he vows that the successor of the Hokuto Shinken will destroy this mausoleum. Arrows are shot into Shu's body, as Shu wishes that he could have seen Ken with his own eyes. Souther then provides the coup de grace by tossing a spear straight through Shu's heart. Now even though he's about to die, Shu's vision miraculously returns to him, as he now sees the face of Shiva and Ken before him. Shu then implores Ken to open up a new era, as he bids him a final farewell. With Shu's body completely crushed by the stone, Ken lets out tears of anguish. "Souther, I won't leave one hair of you left in this world," says Ken. Souther believes it's his destiny to fight Ken, a means for Nanto and Hokuto to finish things once and for all. While walking up the steps, Souther is stabbed in the leg by one of the children. In a flashback, Souther was orphaned, so a previous successor of Nanto Hoken picked him up and raised him as his own son. As for the final training session, Souther was blindfolded and subsequently killed his own master. He didn't know this was gonna happen, so obviously he was heartbroken by it. And it was all by design because Nanto Hoken can only be passed on to one person per generation. And it was from this moment onward that Souther rejected love. If that's the case, I'll defeat you in the name of love, responds Ken. One of Souther's men looks to shoot Ken down with a bow and arrow, but Raoh turns his head around and instructs him not to interfere. Souther makes the first move, but it's Ken who gets the better of him with a kick to the chest. Souther then has his men open up the holy room in the mausoleum, which reveals that Souther's old master is resting there. Though Ken seems to be doing well, Souther quickly turns the tables on him by tossing him down the stairs. Blood then spurts out from Souther's forehead, as Ken announces that he knows the secrets to his body. The position of your heart is inverted, as well as your pressure points. That's your secret, correct? Says Ken. Souther confirms that this is correct, but he's done playing around, as he assumes the Tensho Juji Ho stance, the fist for when the Emperor's pride is at stake. To counter this, Ken assumes the Tenha stance, the ultimate attack of the Hokuto Shinken. Hail rains down from the sky, as the two attack each other in a most epic exchange. The coup de grace, Kenshiro! Ken uses ki to strike the pressure points on Souther, causing massive amounts of blood to eject from the Emperor's backside. Souther's pressure points then reveal themselves, but with a quick flex, he closes up the wounds on his back, so that they may battle once more. The phoenix will never fly again. I ripped off its wings, proclaims Ken. Nevertheless, Souther will never back down. With the veins bulging out of his chest, he attacks with a look of absolute fury. Ken then uses painless Hokuto to deliver the final blows, and this was to prove that love has won the day. Love isn't only sadness and pain. You two should remember there's warmth, says Ken. Souther's demeanor completely changes, as he lumbers over to his dead master to bask in his warmth. Shu's blood pours down the mausoleum as the entire structure then comes crumbling down. With Souther gone, Raoh intends to use this opportunity to retake the world. Raoh then meets up with an old man and claims that he's here to take his life. Now with 5 out of the 6 Sacred Fists of Nanto gone, it's only a matter of time before they confront the remaining star. Toki then reveals that only one person may use Hokuto Shinken, so his life's journey is to put an end to Raoh. Ryu, the man who conceded his right to Hokuto Shinken to Ryo Ken, is said to have a fist superior to Ryo Ken. Raoh and Ryo start exchanging blows, as Raoh is surprised by the strength of his opponent. Ryo then uses a suicidal technique that will kill the both of them. Raoh, however, puts an end to Ryo, as the scar on his back has faded away. Elsewhere, Toki acknowledges that his days are numbered. Therefore, he has little time to finish his life's goal as a warrior. Zengyo then comes to town to inform Toki that Raoh killed his master, Ryo. Ryo's children attempt to put a stop to Raoh, but their attacks have no effect on the hulking man. Now Ken has his doubts that Toki can take down Raoh, so Toki gives him a full display of his power in a sparring match. And despite his sick condition, the two are evenly matched. And with this, Toki resolves himself to complete his life's mission of fighting Raoh. Raoh gives Ryo's children a stern warning, as he wonders if Toki will come to fight him. Toki then visits the graves of his parents, and states that him and his older brother will be buried here as well. Toki then meets up with Raoh, as we find out that the two are actually biological brothers, and not just brothers in name. In a flashback, after the two parents passed away, Ryo Ken came by to take care of them. Well, he only promised to take care of one of the children. So he destroys some rock and tasks them with climbing up the cliff. Whoever reaches the top first is going to go into Hokuto Shinken training. Not wanting to abandon his brother, Raoh carried Toki up the cliff, and said he wouldn't be adopted without Toki. Now because he was climbing up the cliff with only one arm, his endurance reached its limit, as he started to fall off. But that's when Ryo Ken decided to save the both of them and raise them as his own children. In the now, Ken tells Rin that no one can get involved in this battle between the same blood. The two brothers do well to parry each other's attacks, as they fight each other as complete equals. In the past, Ryo Ken pushed Raoh incredibly hard in their training sessions. Despite the punishment, Raoh vowed to become the strongest man in the world, and to make his name echo throughout the world itself. After a thug killed Toki's dog, the boy proceeded to pound his face with his fist. And it was at this moment that Ryo Ken recognized the boy's talent, and also allowed him to be trained in the ways of Hokuto Shinken. Raoh then told Toki that if he ever went astray, he wanted him to seal his kung fu with his own hands. The promised time has come. Now is when I surpass you, says Toki in the now. Quite worthy of you, brother, but you can never surpass me. Toki hits Raoh's pressure points, but they have no effect since he didn't have the intent to kill. Toki sneaks up behind Raoh, but Raoh uses a technique that senses the enemy's presence, and it allows him to deflect the attack unconsciously. And bros, just look at this panel. I mean, god damn, it's incredible stuff. I mean, this is literally on the level of Kentaro Miura right here. It is so freaking good. Raoh aims to show Toki that power is the end-all to be-all, but Toki manages to counter this power with Kung Fu. In the past, Toki helped Ken during their training, much like Raoh helped him up the cliff. And even though only one of them could be the successor of Hokuto Shinken, Toki would let destiny decide the outcome. In the now, Toki nearly hits Raoh with his fist of power, as he says he's always wanted to become like him. He then directs his older brother's vision toward the night sky, as Raoh sees the Death Star hanging over him. Now, legend says that when the two strongest fighters of Hokuto Shinken fight each other, the Star of Death will shine upon the both of them. The two draw upon their maximum strengths, as it's quite clear that they look evenly matched. Toki excels in aerial combat, giving him a chance to give Raoh a thorough beating. In a flashback, Toki says that if Raoh didn't have such destructive ambition, Ken and him would have handed him the title of Hokuto Shinken with pleasure. In the now, Toki goes for the fatal blow, but Raoh catches his arm. Toki, if only you weren't sick, says Raoh. Despite his continued efforts, his sick body isn't strong enough to take down Raoh. Tears stream down Raoh's face, as he says that Toki could have beaten him if he wasn't sick. Raoh says goodbye to his brother as he performs a flurry of punches to put him down. Now, despite his body failing him, Toki continues to fight on. Raoh catches his brother from behind, as Ken reveals that Toki hit specific pressure points on his own body to unleash an incredible surge of power. Unfortunately, these same pressure points have shortened his lifespan considerably, and the effects are irreversible. In the past, Raoh instructed Toki to throw away his tears. To him, tears must be transformed into ambition and strength for his fist to dominate the world. Toki, your heart hasn't changed since childhood. That sad heart that always chased after me, Raoh, at the risk of your own life. That's what called back these tears that had been dried up for so long. With no regrets left, Toki asks his brother to close the curtain on his destiny. Raoh vows that these are the last tears that he will shed, as he will now put an end to his strongest opponent and his little brother. Surprisingly though, Raoh misses on purpose. Now, Toki the man following Keno is dead. From now on, there's only the Toki who fights against his sickness. Live in peace for the rest of your days, says Raoh. Toki begins to cry, as Raoh says that he won't scold him anymore. Raoh then warns Ken that the terrible legend of Keno starts right now. So if he wants to take his life, he can come whenever he wants. And that's gonna end the first parts of this video series covering Fist of the North Star. If you want to see what happens in part 2, make sure to hit that subscribe button. But until next time guys, I'll catch you later.
Hokuto Shinken, the divine fist of the North Star. A man named Kenshiro, Ken for short, walks into town looking for water.
Ken then bends the monster's hand backwards and pulverizes his head with his fist. Raoh then warns Ken that the terrible legend of Keno starts right now. So if he wants to take his life, he can come whenever he wants. A thug named Ganzu tosses a man into the air as if it were some kind of sport. They continue brutalizing the people as they say that Raoh will never return. Ken then makes Ganzu fly through the air with a swift kick to the chest. A man named Ryuga performs Taizen Tenzo Ken, a technique so fast that the victim feels a cold sensation in their body. Now Ryuga's star is Sirius, the dog star, the star that shines brightest in the sky. He then systematically picks off body parts from one of the thugs. Now Ryuga claims that these violent times require a great tree to rule over with tremendous power. Elsewhere, the thugs torture the people, as Raoh returns to put a stop to this. Raoh then returns to the castle to see Ryuga sitting on his throne. Ryuga promptly bows down and says that he trimmed the branches that tainted his legacy. Ryuga then requests a fight with Kenshiro, to which Raoh agrees to this. Now Raoh wonders why Ryuga would pledge his loyalty to him, and why he wants to test his strength against Ken. Raoh then warns some villagers that non-violence cannot be used as a weapon, and a man who renounces his emotions is no longer a man. Some bikers attempt to crush Ken, but he punches a log in half, causing the pieces to crush the riders. We then learn that Ryuga is Yuria's older brother, and he vows to become a bloodthirsty beast to bring peace to the world. Ryuga tosses a spear through a villager, and says that the village now belongs to Raoh. Upon returning, Ken finds out that Ryuga intends to do the same thing to Toki's village. Now Toki takes care of some people in his village. Unfortunately, an arrow goes through one of the elders, and as we can see, it came from Ryuga's bow. Ryuga begins to batter Toki around, as he claims that the spirit of Hokuto lies in anger. Without it, Ken won't be able to reach his full potential. Ryuga becomes a bloodthirsty wolf, and he's doing this to drag Ken into the abyss of sadness. Now in a surprising turn of events, Toki willingly donates his own life, and he's doing this to bring about a new era. Ryuga promptly takes his life, as Ken and Raoh see a shooting star in the sky, signifying that their brother has died. Rin and Bad inform Ken that Ryuga brought Toki to his castle. Ken easily takes out the guards at the castle, as he soon confronts Ryuga directly. Ryuga admits to killing Toki, which sends Kenshiro into an absolute rage. As you wish, you're gonna die. Ken takes down Ryuga and looks for the finishing blow, but that's when Toki stops him. That's right, he's still alive at the moment. Now it turns out that Ryuga disemboweled himself prior to his feelings turning into madness, and he did all this to bring about peace. Kind of a weird way of doing so, but I guess it works. Now Ken must turn his sadness into anger, and by doing so, he'll be able to live on. Toki says they'll all become stars and watch over Ken. And with this, Ken carries Ryuga's body away. Rin says that Ken is overflowing with sadness, but the more sadness that fills him, the more mature that he becomes. Ken then takes out some thugs while demanding to know where Raoh is. One of the 5 shooting stars, Hiyu of the Wind, says that Hokuto will not reign over this world. The one who will bring about peace is the last of the 6 sacred stars of Nanto. Raoh then takes out Hiyu with ease, as he notes that the clouds are changing rapidly. Raoh's army is then attacked by flaming arrows, as this move is being coordinated by Hiyu's brother, Shuren the Flame. Shuren then reveals that the last general of Nanto has chosen Kenshiro in his plight to achieve peace. Elsewhere, Fudo, the Mountain of the 5 Shooting Stars, informs Ken that the last general of Nanto wants to see him. Shuren uses his flames to incinerate Raoh's men. He then aims to turn Raoh into ash, but Raoh catches his hand and breaks his fingers. Shuren then lights himself on fire in hopes of taking Raoh to the afterlife with him. But Raoh doesn't receive a single burn from this, as he twists Shuren's head around with his massive hands. Elsewhere, the last general of Nanto has realized that another shooting star has fallen, and the only thing he can do at the moment is bide his time and wait for Ken to come to him. Raoh orders his strongest squad to go after Kenshiro. Fudo says that Juza is the only one who can stop Raoh's march at the moment. Elsewhere, we see Juzo, and he just happens to be pissing into a thug's mouth. The thug spits out the piss as Juzo says that he's gonna take all the women. After taking down the thug, he grabs as many women as he can hold and tells the others to follow him. However, after finding out that they all have children, he promptly sends them on their way. Raoh's elite troops cut off Ken, but he and Fudo take them out expeditiously. Now Juzo would much rather spend his time chasing after women, as opposed to accepting Fudo's request for help. A thug then looks to take down Juza, but his formless style splits his body in half with ease. Raoh acknowledges Juza's talent. However, he claims that Juza will not make a move. Fudo tells Ken that they must meet with the last general of Nanto, and if he does this, he'll become the strongest man there ever is. The last general of Nanto needs Juzo's talents, and upon seeing the general's real identity, Juza willingly pledges his life. Fudo's army will do everything they can to slow down Raoh, and they're doing this so that Ken can meet up with the general. Meanwhile, the last general city knows freedom and equality, but for this system to last, they need Kenshiro. Juza enters the battlefield as Raoh is surprised that he showed up. Juza's first attack breaks Raoh's helmet, as Raoh wonders if he's found his old spirit again. In a flashback, we learn that Juza loved Yuria. I mean, get in line, am I right? But their union could not be, and that's because Yuria was his half-sister. Now Rin's eyes remind Fudo of the generals. He then grabs onto a large boulder and enters the battlefield. Elsewhere, Juza's first attack puts Raoh on his back foot, and if it was anyone else but Raoh right now, that person would have died. In a flashback, we learn that Juza's raw talent is equal to Raoh's. In the now, Juza steals Raoh's horse, and has his men create a rock slide to prevent his army from chasing him. Raoh! Feel good, biatch? Ha ha ha! Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker! This is how Juza the Cloud lives. Now I'm just wondering to myself, yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker, that's from the Die Hard movies. But this manga came out before the Die Hard movies, so did the Die Hard movies take that? Or is this just a mistranslation and they're just copying the Die Hard movies? I tried to look this up, but I couldn't find any information. Now Juza needs to stop Raoh for 2 days, as we then find out that he has a serious wound on his left abdomen. Now Raoh has no intention of chasing Juza down, as he's certain that he'll return to him. A bandit then whips some kids, so Ken punches a hole straight through his face. We then find out that Lord Fudo has adopted all the abandoned children that he's found. Hilka, the cruelest man in Raoh's army, tosses some children into a sand pit, so Fudo is forced to go after them. After saving 2 of the kids, we find out that the children were in fact Hilka's very own offspring. I mean, what a cruel motherfucker! Hilka's men go after Bad and Rin, but Ken comes in the nick of time to rescue them. Fudo blows in the sand to block Hilka's field of vision, as Ken begins to yank him out with a rope. Ken pulls out Fudo as Juzo says that Ken is definitely worthy of Yuria's love. Hilka uses his belt to wrap up Ken, as he looks to use the spikes on his armor to finish him off. Ken breaks free, and uses a large boulder to put an end to Hilka. Juza then returns to Raoh to have their second battle. Raoh activates his ki, as he's quite excited by this upcoming fight. Juza takes off his armor as he's ready to go all out in this battle with Raoh. Now Juza oiled up his body, and this allows him to strike the first crucial blow. Yet, as we soon learn, Juza's hands were completely destroyed in this exchange. Now Fudo's body took quite the beating up against Raoh's army, so Ken now wants him to reveal the identity of the last general of Nanto. Juzo then implores Raoh to hit him. Raoh does just that, but then Juza takes his arm and puts him into an arm lock. I mean, this guy's going Ronda Rousey on him. And with this, he aims to take Raoh's arm before he dies. Now Juza will not reveal the identity of the last general of Nanto. If he did so, Raoh would fly to him like a hurricane. Elsewhere, Fudo reveals that the last general of Nanto is none other than Ken's beloved, Yuria. And sure enough, when the last general takes off her helmet, we see that it is in fact Yuria. Raoh uses his strength to overpower Juza, as the latter is at a loss for what to do next. Raoh then hits a pressure point that forces him to talk. And with this, Juza starts seeing visions of his sister. He then calls Raoh a gay boy as he retains his wit to the very end. Raoh wants Juza to have a proper burial. After Juza passes away, and it's at this moment that Raoh now understands who the last general is. In the past, 3 of the 5 shooting stars saved Yuria from killing herself. Realizing that Raoh was coming for her, Shin handed over Yuria as they perpetuated the lie that she had killed herself. Ken arrives at the foot of the city as Raoh explains that the last general is Yuria. Yuria! Obedience or death, it's your choice, says Raoh. Raoh stampedes his way through, crushing anyone that hinders his path. Yuria, however, has no intention of yielding to him. Raoh slaughters her men as he's beyond happy to see her again. In the past, when Raoh suffered severe wounds in training, it was none other than Yuria who took care of him. In the present, we find out that this is not Yuria, but only a girl named To. Now To loves Raoh, but Raoh does not reciprocate her feelings. So, because of this, she decides to kill herself. While Yuria makes her escape, Rihaku the Sea comes to impede Raoh's path. Now the room is covered in traps, but Raoh uses the floor to protect himself from danger. Now Yuria eagerly anticipates meeting up with Ken, but Ken wants to dispatch with Raoh before any problems arise. Now Rihaku is thoroughly defeated, as Ken arrives to have his second showdown with Raoh. Ken wins the first exchange, as aura radiates prominently from his body. Get up, Raoh. It's time for you to return to the stars. Raoh goes in for a massive kick as Ken blocks with his left arm. The back and forth continues with Ken narrowly dodging Raoh's fist while on the ground. Raoh then notices that Ken's ki is floating, much like Toki's ki. He then uses raised fists to slash Raoh across the abdomen. In a flashback, we learn that the strongest technique of Hokuto Shinken is Muso Tensei. No one has mastered it in over 2,000 years, and it requires sadness to be achieved. Ken has engraved the sadness of his fallen friends and foes into his techniques, which makes him immensely powerful. Raoh, Toki is waiting for you. For the first time in Raoh's life, he now knows fear. Even from an early age, Ken transformed his sadness into strength. Now Raoh thought that this was ridiculous, and he aims to prove it in the here and now. Raoh, your ambition comes to an end now. Raoh focuses his entire body for the final clash, as the floor begins to give out. Rihaku then saves Ken as Raoh falls down. Fortunately for him, he finds himself in front of Yuria. This proves that heaven is definitely on my side, says Raoh. Raoh runs off with Yuria as Ken emerges from the rubble with blood streaming from his eyes. Despite being blind for the moment, Ken will continue fighting on like Lord Shu. Later on, Raoh has his first nightmare, as he can't stop thinking about Ken's fist. Yuria tells Raoh that the outcome of the fight is obvious, as Raoh becomes enraged. To eliminate his greatest foe, Raoh will now become the devil himself. Raoh then demands Fudo's demon blood, so that he himself can become a demon. Turns out, Fudo was quite the brute in the past, and even put the fear of God in a younger Raoh. Now Yuria protected a pregnant dog from Fudo, and when the babies were finally born, Fudo saw the joys of life, and he thusly put an end to his savage ways. However, he must fight once more to put an end to Raoh's reign of terror. Fudo's fighting ki has been revived as the two towering men come face to face. One of Raoh's men swings an axe at Fudo, but he easily dodges the man by hitting a pressure point. He then squeezes onto the man like a grape, as his fighting spirits and fists are completely restored. Now if Raoh backs away even an inch, he wants his men to fire arrows at him, and he's doing this because he cannot accept being a scared coward. Raoh then toys with Fudo, as the fear that paralyzed him is now gone. Raoh goes in for the finishing blow, as Fudo pulls him in for a bear hug. Nevertheless, Raoh puts an end to this, with a karate chop to the head. Judo of Raoh's army comes to end Ken, yet Ken dispatches of him with ease. Despite getting battered around, Fudo gains strength through the spirit of the children. Unfortunately, Raoh is far superior to him. Fudo's blood has now washed away Raoh's fear. Now Fudo continues drawing strength from the children, as a huge bolt nearly hits Raoh. And as it turns out, Raoh retreated with only 1 foot. But as he told his men, if he retreats even an inch, they're to shoot him. Fudo then claims that Raoh saw Kenshiro in his fist. Just then, more bolts impale Fudo's body. Fudo claims that quote-unquote daddy has won the battle, as he collapses to the ground in front of the children. Raoh punishes his men for not shooting him when he retreated. Ken then comes along and holds on to Fudo in his dying moments. Fudo now wants Ken to take the children and the world into his arms. After the burial, it's time for the final battle with Ken and Raoh. Now flames cannot hurt Raoh's body, but sorrow can surpass the body. For Raoh to know sorrow, he needs Yuria to give him her life. Ken then uses Raoh's horse to meet up for their battle. Raoh is the name of the man who will bury the strongest man of Hokuto, and a new history shall begin at Raoh's hands. Now Raoh is no match for Ken's Musou Tensei. However, as it turns out, Raoh knows the technique as well. And to learn this technique, he drenched his soul in sorrow, as he then points out the motionless Yuria. This is the first time that Raoh raised his hand to a woman, but taking her life granted him with Musou Tensei. In a flashback, Yuria turned away from Raoh, realizing it would be harder for him to take her life if he looked in her eyes. After attacking her, Raoh was surprised that he still had tears within him. In the now, Raoh recalls that this is the place that they first met Yuria. A young Ken picked up Yuria's ball, and this helped her discover her emotions, because prior to this, she had no emotions. In the now, Raoh and Ken are perfectly matched, so they must rely on pure grit to get them through this battle. The two continue clashing, as Rin envisions them as children. Now Ken is observing Raoh's fighting ki perfectly, as he claims that his next attack will separate them forever. Ken is fighting on with your heart, Miss Yuria, says Rin. Desperate for the win, Raoh will now put his entire soul in this next attack, as he tells Ken to return to the sky. It is Ken, however, who lands the crucial blow, and it's because he has love for his eldest brother and Yuria. Even in his waning moments, Raoh cannot admit that his fist carried the mark of love. In a flashback, we learn that Raoh didn't strike Yuria down, and that's because he found out that she was riddled with a fatal illness. She hoped her life would bring light to the world, and begged Raoh to send her to the sky. But Raoh couldn't bear to kill her, so he thusly put her into a false death. And this sadness for Yuria awoke Raoh's Musou Tensei. Raoh then strikes a channeling point in his leg, allowing him to walk towards Ken. Yuria then says that that's enough, as Rin checks her heartbeat. Raoh throws his fist at Ken, but Ken realizes that he's already given up. Raoh then grabs onto Ken's face, as he looks like he's pleased with Ken's progress. Yuria then wakes up from her slumber, as Raoh says that she'll live on for a few more years. Raoh's body then begins to glow white, as he raises his fist towards the sky. "I have no regrets in my existence," says Raoh, and because of this, light then shines upon the world again. Raoh, who is filled with so much hate and animosity, has given the world a blessing. Afterwards, Ken buries Raoh's body next to his brother, Toki. Ken tells Raoh to rest in peace, as he will now carry on the legacy of Hokuto Shinken with his life engraved on his heart. Ken then leaves with Yuria, as Rin says that they'll return one day. In the future, Bat tells Rin that he only rescued half of the villagers. Bat then wishes that Ken was here right now, but based on the Big Dipper, it seems like he's given up on his fighting days. Elsewhere, Ken carves a portrait of Yuria out of some stone, as a boy named Juza brings him some food. Now after Yuria's passing, Ken has become an empty shell. He seems to have lost all his vitality for life. Dorja of the execution troops then looks to commandeer the land. Ken then implores Juza to run away so that no one will have to die. Kokuo angrily attempts to snap Ken out of his funk, but Ken is in no mood to fight right now. "You might as well just bite me to death," says Ken. Juza returns to the village to see the destruction firsthand. Now being that Juza is the son of Juza, he's gonna decide to run away and live how he wants to. Elsewhere, Dorja tortures some children that were captured from the village. Juza then shows up with Kokuo, as he rushes in headfirst to save the children. Kokuo returns to Ken with several arrows in his body. Ken then notices Juza passed out on top of Kokuo. Ken then looks up at Yuria as now both her older brother and nephew have passed away. Ken and Kokuo begin crying, as Ken realizes that he's lost his honor as a man. The two then make their way to Dorja for some much needed vengeance. Ken proceeds to crush his legs with a swift kick. Ken then flexes his shirt off as he pummels the thug. Dorja remarks that it doesn't hurt, but Ken reminds him that he's already dead. Ken then sees a wanted picture for Rin and Bat, as he now accepts his fate as the successor of the Hokuto Shinken. With peace achieved through Raoh's light, it brought a new age of classes, and as always, there were those that were disenfranchised. Public executioners abuse their power for their own gain, as we see that Bat and Rin have bounties on their head. The two look to free a prison wagon as one of the executioner lights it on fire. The two then report the bad news to Rihaku. Rihaku is at his wit's end, as he hopes that Ken will deliver justice to this cruel world. The various districts are systematically destroyed, but a man named Basque says it will be different for his district. He wants to use a woman that looks like Rin and execute her in public, and this is all means to show that the rebels are powerless. Rin and Bat want to intervene, but Rihaku implores them to hold back since they're surrounded by the army. Just then, a familiar friend enters the Coliseum to put a stop to this execution. Ken informs them that he comes from the north, and they're all absolutely dead. Basque then realizes that it was Ken who destroyed the various districts. Basque then attacks with a spinning attack, but Ken puts a stop to this as he throws him into the air. He then finishes him off with a flurry of punches, as Basque's body explodes. Bat and Rin then meet up with Ken, as Bat shows off the wounds that he's received when protecting Rin. The two begin crying as Ken embraces them with a warm hug. Ken informs them that Yuria passed away, as he hands a necklace from Yuria to Rin. Ken then tells them to come along, as they are now warriors like him. Elsewhere, if some local thugs take out Ken, they'll receive their own district. Ein takes them out, as the local lord wonders if he could take out Ken. Ken then enters the town, as Ein makes it clear that he's gonna take him out. Ken steps off of his horse, as he notices that Ein uses a brawler style. Ein goes in for the haymaker, but Ken easily deflects and responds with a counterattack. Ein then continues to attack, but it's no use for Ken's Hokuto Shinken. Buzzoli calls Ein a disgrace, as we find out that he's the #1 bounty hunter in the city. Ein then smashes Buzzoli's face as he calls out Ken. He then wonders if his woman will forgive him for his loss. The fat leader then calls Ken stupid for attacking his district, as he attempts to hypnotize Ken. The hypnotism proves ineffective, as Ken karate chops him on the head. And as we've come to expect at this point, the man is already dead as his body explodes. Some bounty hunters look to kill Asuka, as Ein comes in furiously to take them out. Later on, we find out that Asuka is his adoptive daughter, as he vows to take out Ken. Bat meets up with Ein, and asks why he's following Ken. Ein wants Ken's head, as Bat leaps back to dodge his attack. Bat says that Ein could take a district if he wants, so the two proceed to take an entire district by themselves. The next morning, Ken realizes that Bat must have taken the district, as we then see the victorious Bat and Ein on the ground. Both Bat and Ein are fighting to protect a girl that they love, as Bat reveals that he wants to be just like Ken one day. Bat and the Hokuto army celebrate their victory, as Ein tells his adoptive daughter that he wants to write a story for her one day. Ein then makes his way towards a prison to stop the execution from happening. Unfortunately, Ren, who is entrusted to watch Asuka for Ein, has betrayed him. With Asuka's life on the line, Ein can do nothing except accept a beating. Ken then grabs onto Ren and instructs Ein not to hold back. After Ein takes care of business, he wonders why Ken came back, and Ken says that it's too early for him to die. Ken and Ein then make their way to a special cell to save some men. They're here to save the Harn brothers, both of whom are exceptionally skilled fighters. The two are encased in concrete, so Ken breaks them out with a single punch. Elsewhere, Rihaku says that the red-tinted sun is a sign that much blood will be spilled. Falco, the Golden Wolf, says that the Heavenly Emperor is angry as he takes out a grunt who disobeys him. The brothers then reveal that it was Falco who defeated them. Ein then entrusts Ken with Asuka, so that he can fight Falco at full strength. Ken then brings Asuka to Mama Ya so that she could take care of her. As it turns out, Falco eliminated the village elder from Mama Ya's village, and declared that Hokuto and Nanto would disappear from this world. He says only the Mother Star of the Heavenly Empire will shine in the sky from this day forward. Now the martial arts that he practices is Gento Koken, and it wants to destroy Hokuto. Now Bat will sacrifice himself for the others. However, Falco determines that he's not the real leader. Rin is in fact the leader of the Hokuto army. Ken states that Bat and Rin cannot win against the warriors sent by the Heavenly Emperor. Solia the Purple Light then impedes Ken's progress, and looks to end him here and now. Falco looks to put an end to Rin, but the Harn brothers come in with a boulder to distract him. The brothers then aim to take him to hell with a bomb. Now the brothers represent Nanto, so Falco aims to destroy them here and now. Solia uses circular attacks to cut Ken across the chest. Now Ken's attacks are ineffective, as Solia reveals that if he can't beat him, he'll have no chance against Falco. According to Rihaku, Hokuto Shinken and Gento Koken were the two fists that protected the Holy Emperor. Now the one who uses Gento Koken is referred to as the man with shining hands, and at one time, this kung fu surpassed Hokuto Shinken. The Harn brothers are sent flying by Falco's ki. The older brother then decides to sacrifice himself by setting off the bomb. However, Falco remains unharmed by the blast, since his soldiers sacrifice themselves to shield him. By transferring his ki to a blade, Solia is able to slash a wound across Ken's chest. Ken seizes the advantage, and eventually defeats Solia. That being said, he wonders who this Falco character is. Falco makes his way back to the capital as the Governor General requests to see him. In the past, Falco offered up his left leg to Raoh, so that he wouldn't attack his village. Rihaku then shows Ken a canal of corpses, since no one leaves the capital alive. Falco then meets with the Governor General, Jackal. Now Jackal's word is just as important as the Heavenly Emperor, so he whips Falco and demands him to defeat Hokuto. Shoki intervenes and says that Jackal does not pass on the true word of the Emperor. In the past, Raoh terrified Jackal, and ever since that day, he's held a grudge against Hokuto. Shoki attacks Jackal, but Falco is forced to take him out. Now in actuality, Falco put him into a false death, so that he could have him escape via the canal. Eventually, while traveling through the canal, Shoki meets up with Ken, as Ken reveals that this man offered Yuria and him their own promised land. In the past, Ken saved Shoki's village from some bandits, and given that Shoki realized that Yuria was not long for this world, he provided the two with a sanctuary. In the now, after burying Shoki, Ken throws a spear at the royal capital, and says that from now on, this is his fight. Jackal panics at the notion that Ken is marching towards the capital. Ken uses a rod to electrify a guard at the gate as he calmly bends the bars open so he can pass through. Ken continues obliterating the army as Falco says that they have no chance of stopping him. Jackal goes into a complete panic as he begs for Falco to kill Kenshiro. Ken then waits for Falco to reveal himself, as Falco acknowledges that the 2,000-year history of Gento Koken might end with him today. Falco hands Saya a detonator, and if he should lose against Ken, Saya will press the button to kill Jackal, the Emperor, and the entire Imperial capital. Lady Mew, who loves Falco, wants to be the one that presses the detonator. And with this, Lord Falco marches off into battle. Falco then uses the key in his hand to break Ken's nunchucks in half. Ken rushes into battle, as the both of them draw blood upon each other. Rin's body begins to shake, as Ken and Falco emit powerful auras from their bodies. Falco gets the first critical blow, and even lands on Ken's right fist. Realizing that Falco lost his leg to Raoh, Ken decides to hit a pressure point in his own leg, so that they can fight each other on an even playing field. Ken then lands a critical strike as the sky begins to split open. Surprisingly, the Heavenly Emperor then begins to call out Rin's name. Ken and Falco continue their epic exchange, as Bat, Rin, and Ein make their way towards the Emperor. Inside the capital, Jackal is furious that Mew would betray him, and so orders for her to be killed. Ein intervenes by taking care of the guards, and slugging Jackal directly in the face. Before Ein kills him, Jackal activates a trapdoor that sends them all plunging downwards. When they reach the bottom of the pit, they're surprised to find out that the Heavenly Emperor is down there too. Bat and Rin make their way down the hole, as Rin is surprised to find out that the Heavenly Emperor looks exactly like her. Falco then tells Ken about the two Heavenly Emperors, as Ken wonders what he's talking about. In the past, twins were born who would inherit the Heavenly Empire. However, twin stars would bring nothing but misery upon the heavens, so it was Falco's responsibility to eliminate one of them. However, after seeing Rin's smiling face, he realized that he couldn't do it, so he decided to spare her life. In the now, Falco must put an end to Hokuto and the sad destiny of the twin stars. Louie, Rin's twin sister, has lost her eyesight because she was trapped in the darkness for so long, but at least for now, she can embrace her sister for the first time in her life. Boulders start crumbling in as Ein gets hit in the back of the head. Now Jackal no longer needs Louie alive, as he'll kill Ken and Falco after their arduous battle. The fight rages on, as Ken eventually hits a vital channeling point, and it's so vital in fact that it's gonna kill Falco. Falco then destroys all his cells in his body so that he can stop the reaction of the pressure point. After making their escape, Ein implores Rin and Louie to stop the fight between Ken and Falco. With both Ken and Falco on their last leg, Jackal prepares his troops to take them down at once. All Falco's pores begin to spray blood of vapor into the air. When Ken looks into Falco's eyes, something tells him to stop. Jackal and his army then shoot a barrage of arrows at the two wary fighters. Ken manages to catch one of the arrows, preventing it from killing Falco. Ein punches a hole into the ground, causing a deluge of water to wash away the Heavenly Empire's army. Unfortunately, Ein pushed his body to the absolute limit, causing him to pass away shortly afterwards. While Bat holds onto his body, he says, "A friend who shared the same blood as us has died. You must respond." Ken takes care of several men before throwing an arrow across Jackal's cheek. Ken then allows Falco the pleasure of finishing off Jackal himself, and despite his poor physical condition, Falco obliterates the weak Jackal in spectacular fashion. Falco then bows down in Louie's presence, satisfied that she's still alive. Bat then realizes that Rin must have gone back to the castle to save the slaves abandoned underground, which makes him quite nervous. After finding Saya, Rin runs into Jask, Jackal's oldest son. After punching Rin, he vows to blow up everyone to avenge his father. Saya attempts to warn the others about the predicament, as the entire capital goes up in a fiery blaze. Shortly afterwards, a funeral is then held for Ein, as Asuka vows not to cry in his presence. She then hands Ken Ein's gloves, as Ken vows that his death will not have been in vain. Falco then says that Jask escaped across the only sea that is left in the world, and across said sea is a land where combat reigns supreme. It is said that a 400-year kung fu also exists in this land, and it may be the origin of Gento, Hokuto, and Nanto. By taking Rin hostage to this land, Jask is inviting both Falco and Ken into a proverbial hell. We then see Ken sailing on a boat with a new pair of shades on. And I gotta say, he looks pretty badass. After a couple of pirates attack him, he decides to teach their captain a lesson. Afterwards, he points them in the direction that he wants to go. The captain warns him that the land he seeks is soaked in blood, and the demons that live there are strong and merciless. Falco then arrives, only to find out that Jask and his men were completely annihilated. Rin was stolen away from them, and it sounds like she's gonna be married off to one of the demons. The captain then tells Ken a story in which 100 of his seamen were defeated by a single foe. And not only that, the guy happened to be a kid who wasn't even more than 15 years old. A thug then boards the ship, saying they crossed the border of their country. Ken tells him to get off of the boat, and when he doesn't comply, well, he kills him on the spot. Ken then vows to find the captain's missing son, as he cruises off to the country of demons. Ken takes down the two men right away, as they warn him that he'll end up like the other man, i.e. Falco. And sure enough, Falco is on death's doorstep. "I'm sorry, I wasn't able to save Rin. Please forgive me." The man who did this then steps forward, displaying his impressive athleticism. Ken then slashes him across the face, as the man's blood begins to boil with rage. The unnamed man tosses ninja stars at Ken, but Ken repels them with ease. Falco then implores Ken to revive his fighting spirit, but it will only last for a short while before he eventually passes away. With his vitality restored for a moment, Falco attains his vengeance, slicing the unnamed demon's body in half. While Falco fades away, a carrier pigeon reveals that Mew is carrying his child, which gives him a sense of joy in his last moments. Elsewhere, Rin learns that she'll be offered up as a prize to the victor of a duel. Ara Shokan takes the victory, earning him the right to take Rin for himself. The Supreme Commander, however, wants Ara to destroy the intruder first, i.e. Ken. Ara then confronts Ken, saying he'll defeat him inside of 2 minutes. Ara creates several afterimages of himself, leaving Ken unsure which one to attack. So he simply attacks them all, leaving Ara all battered up and bruised. And as we know at this point, he's already dead. A man in a hood says that there exists a kung fu that is the origin of Hokuto, and only a single man practices it. The hooded man then returns to Rin. He says that one day Ken and the demons will be destroyed, and once that happens, another Hokuto will shine. The hooded man then escapes with Rin. They get tracked down by a single demon, so the man uses Hokuto Ryoken to make his body explode. The Supreme Commander intervenes, discovering that this man is Rasetsu, the one who fights and devours demons. Now Rasetsu takes on the name of Sachi, and he declares that he'll take the Supreme Commander's head. The Supreme Commander sends 2 demons upon Sachi, as Sachi takes out one of them relatively quickly. The Supreme Commander then rips out the entrails of the other one due to his cowardice. Sachi reveals that he stole Rin because he's truly after Ken. Ken then takes on a pair of demons as he learns that Sachi is the name of the man who uses Hokuto. A boy then informs Ken that Sachi isn't the man that he used to be, and it's because Hokuto Ryoken has driven him mad. The Supreme Commander makes Sachi look like a novice, as he informs him that he's come 100 years too early to fight him. Ken then learns that Hokuto Ryoken is the most sinister fist in the world, and it will bring about great tragedies. The Supreme Commander breaks Sachi's rib, but Sachi returns the favor by breaking his arm. Rin attempts to escape, but Sachi warns her that he'll kill her if she does so. Now the big sister and Tao both love Sachi, but they mustn't repeat his mistakes. The commander and Sachi trade blows, with Sachi taking the commander's right eye. Though he's been defeated, the commander warns Sachi that he'll never defeat the 3 great generals. They are literally worshipped like war gods. Sachi, however, says that he'll use Ken as a pawn to fight the generals. Now everyone that learns Hokuto Ryoken is devoured by ambition, and if Sachi is not careful, he'll turn into Han, the 3rd general. Lord Han practices Hokuto Ryoken, and his fists are so fast that no one can even see his shadow. Rhea, who once loved Sachi, has now given up on him. However, Ken reminds him that she could still take him back. We then learn that Sachi is the pirate captain's son from earlier on. Rin implores Sachi to meet up with Han, as Sachi wonders why she shows no fear. Sachi then disguises himself, as he offers up Rin to General Han. Sachi goes in for a surprise attack, but it's Han who gets the better of their exchange. Sachi then hands over Rin, as Ken finally makes his appearance. Sachi then takes out a guard while he escapes, realizing that Ken is already here. "Rin, I've come to bring you home," says Ken. Ken and Han prepare for their fight outside, as Sachi makes his way back. In a flashback, we learn that Leia built a boat for Sachi, and it was all a means for him to escape from the land of demons. Leia, on the other hand, would be forced to marry one of the demons, so Sachi decided that he couldn't abandon her. In the now, it begins to snow as General Han lands the first critical blow. That being said, Han could not see Ken's fist, which means that he also sustained damage. The 2 trade blows as Sachi learns well from their movements. In a flashback, Leia gets punished for teaching the youth about love. A man in a hood then took out the instigator, and the man in the hood used Hokuto Ryoken, and upon seeing this, Sachi begged the man to teach him his ways. In the now, Sachi tells Rin that a savior was supposed to come to this land, and his name was Raoh. While Ken twists Han's arm, Rin informs Sachi that Ken defeated Raoh. Sachi is flabbergasted that Ken defeated Raoh. He then karate chops Ken into the ground, In a flashback, Raoh implored Sachi to be strong. Sachi's father said that one day he could travel across the sea with Raoh. Rin then says that Ken is Raoh's little brother. Ken and Han then lock their hands as the fight intensifies. Rin says that when Ken fights a strong opponent, he only becomes stronger. Han tosses Ken into a well as he looks for the finishing blow. Ken repels him, using one of Raoh's attacks, surprising everyone in the area. The waters then begin to run red, signifying the arrival of Raoh. Now this country is the birthplace of Hokuto Shinken, and the birthplace of Raoh. The battle between Han and Ken rages on. Han then reveals that Ken was also born in this country, and he left when he was just a baby. The two continue exchanging massive blows as rocks crumble down around them. Now Han hit a channeling point that rendered Ken's legs useless. He goes in for the final blow, but he misses, since Ken hit a channeling point that controls his optic nerve. Ken then performs the finishing blow, as it appears that he's the victor. He then says that the country was on the verge of disappearing 25 years ago. So Juke, master of Hokuto Ryoken, sent the 3 boys out of the country, and those 3 boys just happened to be Raoh, Toki, and Ken. However, with the hope of returning peace, he taught Hokuto Ryoken to Han, Hyo, and Kaio. Han warns Ken that only Raoh can beat General Hyo, so he should just go home to avoid death. Ken then feels the destiny of this land flowing through his veins. He then implores Rin to go home and make some babies, but she decides to stay by his side. Now Juke is flabbergasted that it wasn't Raoh who went to this country, but instead Ken who crossed the sea. He then says that they must stop the insurrection of men disguised as rogues. With the rogues falsely believing that Raoh has returned, they prepare to raise an army to take the country back. They go to save the children first, but they're met with a rude surprise. With the realization that Lord Raoh is dead, people blame Ken for the tragedy befalling the country. Ken proceeds to take out some thugs, as he vows to accomplish Raoh's legend. The crab attempts to lure Ken into a trap, but it's Ken who gets the better of him. General Hyo then pays his respects to General Han, promising to avenge him. Juke then reveals that General Hyo is Ken's biological brother. In a flashback, Hyo begged for Raoh to take care of Ken at all cost. "Alright, I understand," replied Raoh. Now Juke took away Hyo's memory when he taught him Hokuto Ryoken, meaning that Hyo views Han and Kaio as his real brothers. Juke tells Leia and Tao to stop Kenshiro. As for him, he'll fight General Hyo. Hyo then proceeds to obliterate one of the guards at the entrance. Leia and Tao meet up with Sachi, noting that he's gone back to normal thanks to Ken. Juke then meets up with Hyo, vowing to take his student's life. Elsewhere, we finally get a glimpse of the first general, Kaio. And damn if he doesn't look terrifying. Kaio then steals Rin, as Leia and Tao are powerless to do anything to stop him. Kaio tells Rin of a legend where a savior burned all the demons in this land, and this man was seen as a god. And so from this day forward, the successors of Hokuto Shinken were born. Now Hokuto Ryoken was omitted from the history books, so Kaio wants to eliminate Hokuto Shinken permanently. Juke immobilizes Hyo. It turns out that he left a magical imprint in Hyo's memory, and it's the only means for destroying Kaio. Elsewhere, Sachi misleads Ken, as a giant meteor passes in front of the Big Dipper. Juke nearly delves into Hyo's memory before being stopped. The old master warns that Hokuto Ryoken cannot be allowed to exist because of its heavy karma. In the past, Juke was consumed by the evil karma of Hokuto Ryoken. It even caused him to kill his wife and his child. Hokuto Ryoken creates devils, and now General Kaio is the biggest devil of all. It turns out that his armor isn't for protection. It serves to contain the evil ki that gushes out against his will. Just then, a word comes in that Ken is approaching Kaio's castle. Ken proceeds to take out Kaio's execution squad. Kaio's armor begins to crack open, as he desperately seeks the blood of Hokuto Shinken. Juke informs Hyo that Ken is his brother, and that they are descendants of the original Hokuto. Now Ken will be the one to seal Ryoken, and Hyo will be the one to unlock the fist. Hyo's memories are then locked shut, as he goes through much pain as he remembers Ken as a baby. Hyo's memories are then unlocked, as he goes through much pain as he remembers Ken as a baby. Kaio says that Ken's seal has yet to be broken, as he sends him flying back with a massive amount of ki. Ken is then forced to use Muso Tensei, and it's a necessity at this point to keep up with Kaio's incredible strength. Kaio sees through this, making Ken feel utterly defenseless. Blood spurts from Ken's body, as Kaio will completely erase Hokuto Shinken from this world. In the past, Hyo refused to tell Juke Hokuto Shinken's secret technique, since it's only meant for Ken to use. In the now, Hyo strikes Juke, as the Elder Master strikes his forehead to return all his memories. Hyo then breaks down as blood spurts from his backside, and it's spurting out in the shape of the Big Dipper. Now it turns out that Kyo altered his recovery points, preventing him from remembering Ken and the secret technique. Kyo says that Hyo holds the key to defeating him, but if his disruptive points are struck, he'll become a true demon. As it turns out, Hokuto Ryoken's blood is cursed, so Kyo intends to use Rin to purify it by giving birth to his child. Hyo then puts an end to Juke, as this era is now on the verge of being thrown into chaos. Kyo continues toying with Ken, as the prospects for victory look bleak. Sachi, however, provides enough of a distraction so that his father and the other pirates can tie up Kyo. They then throw sulfuric acid on him, forcing him to retreat to the water. Sachi's father wants to finish him off here and now, but Kyo sends an arrow straight through his chest. Though he's dying, Sachi's father is glad that he got to see his son one last time. The pirates then do whatever it takes to slow down Kyo, as Sachi makes his escape with Ken. Unfortunately, Kyo is there to halt their escape. He then batters Sachi around, as the young fighter has no chance against the demon. Fortunately, Kyo's armor begins to shrink, which means his demonic fighting spirit cannot escape, putting him through much pain. He attempts to fire a blast at Ken's fighting spirit, but he misses. Kyo then collapses to the ground, as Sachi makes his escape with Ken on a raft. Despite his immense pain, Kyo vows to erase Hokuto Shinken from the world. Now while Sachi and Ken blend into a crowd, they eventually get noticed by General Hyo. Sachi then offers up his eye to appease Hyo. He then explains that this man, i.e. Ken, is everything to him, so Hyo implores him to take good care of him. Shortly afterwards, Hyo realizes that that's the same face that he sees in his memories. Kyo subsides the demonic energy, as he must eradicate the Hokuto clan main lineage so that he can create his own era. Kyo then takes the life of his sister, claiming everything in this world was made for him. When Hyo sees Sayaka, he cries over her dead body. Kyo then claims it was Ken who did this. Hyo then vows to take down Ken and Hokuto Shinken. Now Ken, who miraculously recovered from his wounds, then makes water flow backwards up a cliff. Kyo wants the flames to burn for 7 days and 7 nights for the sake of Sayaka's passing. Hyo, Sayaka's fiancé, thanks Kyo for his kindness, and still regards him as a brother-in-law. Hyo's demonic spirit activates, as Kyo is excited that he'll soon fight his own flesh and blood. Ken then takes out Lord Gyoko, and warns him that he won't be defeated by Kyo twice. General Hyo's most trusted men come to say their farewells, and that's because they had hoped that he would take down Kyo one day. Hyo takes them all out, as he says that there's not a single teardrop left in his body. Hyo orders his men to burn down the traitor's village, but that's when Ken comes in to put a stop to things. Sachi then asks Ken if he would still fight Hyo if he wasn't his older brother. After learning the truth, Ken then vows to put down his own brother, much like he had to put down Raoh in the past. Kuruyasha, a man even stronger than Juke, attempts to put an end to Hyo's dark ambitions. Hyo impales him with ease, but that's when Ken makes his presence known. Kuruyasha tricked Hyo by faking his own death, as he then reveals to Ken that he's been his servant since birth. Kuruyasha then uses his secret technique on Hyo, yet Hyo lops off his arm in the process. Hyo looks for the finishing blow, but that's when Ken steps in to engage in combat. Hyo's demonic spirit creates an anti-gravity space that overwhelms the opponent. Ken breaks through the technique, as the two brothers exchange a flurry of epic blows. Hyo continues warping space, vowing to drag Ken to hell if he cannot win. Hyo's channeling points are unhittable, so Ken vows just to beat him to a pulp instead. Kyo then takes off his own mask for Rin, and she's surprised to see that he looks exactly like Raoh. Turns out that Kyo is Raoh's older brother, and he's the one that created the legend of Raoh. The god of war begins to cry behind Hyo, as it disappears shortly afterwards. Hyo nearly kills Ken with Hokuto Shinken, as the real battle starts here and now. The climactic exchange is set to take place, but that's when Sachi impales Hyo from behind. "Forgive me, Ken, but this was the only way." Kyo then looks to impregnate Rin, as Rin says that he could have never defeated his younger brother, i.e. Raoh. Kyo then bears down on Rin, as she says that he's insane. Sachi vows to take his own life for having interfered in Ken's battle, but Hyo stops him, saying that Ken would have beat him regardless. With Hyo's memories restored, he asks Ken if he killed Sayaka, and Ken verifies that he did not. Now it turns out that Juke missed Hyo's channeling points in the past, so Hyo didn't lose his memories at first. That was caused later on by Kaio. In a flashback, Kaio seals away Hyo's memories, and the bloodline of Hokuto Shinken. In the now, Hyo was waiting for Ken to come, as Ken places a hand on his shoulder. Big brother, Kenshiro. Now Kaio doesn't care if Rin kills herself, as the guard reports that Hyo's memories have returned. Finding out that Sachi intervened in the fight, Kaio wants to crush him thoroughly. Sachi then makes his way to Ken and Hyo's birthplace. Kaio decides to intervene, and punishes Sachi for his insolence. Kaio then notices a caryatid, which means that this place holds the hidden technique of Hokuto Shinken. Ken then receives word that Kaio went after Sachi. Kaio touches the statue as his veins turn black, and the strength leaves his body. Kaio then starts pummeling Sachi, saying he'll destroy all the women. Ken takes care of some thugs with some flamethrowers, as he tells Sachi not to give in. Kaio continues brutalizing Sachi. That is, until the woman's statue gives Sachi a boost in vitality. He then gains the advantage by taking Kaio's backside. Rin determines that love is the secret fist of the original Hokuto. Kaio takes down Sachi and says that if the essence of Hokuto Shinken is love, then the essence of Hokuto Ryoken is hate. In Sachi's waning moments, he tells Leia he became a demon to protect her, and he did this because he loved her this entire time. Ken arrives, seeing Sachi dead on the ground, and he realized that it was a statue that called him here. Ken then reads from a sacred stone pillar, as fighting ki then enters his body. With this, Ken learned of the life of the original founder of Hokuto Shinken, and thusly lifted his own seal. Ken then finds Kaio. The ruthless Kaio hits a pressure point to remove the light from Rin's eyes, and the affection from her heart. And the first person that she sees upon waking up will become her true lover. Ken rushes towards Rin, but Kaio kicks him in the chest. The horse with Rin atop runs away, as Ken vows to make Kaio pay for what he's done. The two trade blows, as Kaio says that this swamp is a spiritual place for him. Kaio then reveals that his mother died to save both Ken and Hyo, and this is her burial place. In the past, there was an explosion at the martial arts palace, and Ken and Hyo were trapped inside. Kaio's mother decided to dump water onto herself and walked into the blazing inferno, and she was doing this to save the two boys. Kaio couldn't accept his mother's death, so along with Raoh, they went to retrieve her body. After burying her, Kaio used physical suffering to eliminate all the pain in his heart. Kaio then displays the countless wounds inflicted upon his own body. Ken then reveals his own wounds, saying that for each one that he has taken, he's received a heart. Elsewhere, a warrior named Zebra catches Hyo with some chains. We then see a group of bandits with Rin in their possession. They then implore her to open her eyes. Ken punches Kaio's chest, but no blood flows out since he's rejected love. In a flashback, Raoh vowed to eliminate his older brother after finishing off Ken. It was then and there that Kaio eliminated his memory of his little brother. And from that day onward, he spread the legend of Raoh, proof that he rejected love. Ken then accepts a wound from Kaio, thusly engraving his heart into his. Kaio says his heart doesn't exist as the two send each other flying back. In a flashback, Juke told Kaio to lose to Hyo, since Hokuto Ryoken cannot surpass its masters. If you fight all out tomorrow, know that Raoh and Toki's lives are forfeit. And because of this, Kaio intentionally lost to Hyo. Juke then says that he was born too early to be the successor of Hokuto. Ken reveals that Raoh knew about the humiliation that Kaio suffered. Despite this, Raoh still respected him more than anyone else in the world. Kaio says that Raoh was defeated because of his compassion, and so will Ken in short order. Kaio sends Ken into a cave, as the latter struggles to breathe. Despite his injuries, Hyo still defeats Zebra with little effort. Now Kaio set up pillars in the position of the Big Dipper, and this is all it means to restrict Ken's movements. Kaio has taken the position of the Star of Death, as deadly gas starts entering into Ken's body. And because of this, Ken will be paralyzed soon enough. So Kaio gives him a choice. He tells him to go kill himself. However, Ken stands up in defiance, saying that Kaio will die at the hands of a hero. If my older brother ever becomes warped, kill him with your own two hands. Kaio will always be a hero in my heart, says Raoh. An oaf named Numeri looks to take Rin for himself, but General Hyo puts a stop to this. Rin's eyes begin to open, as Hyo covers them up and says that there's only one man that she should be looking at. Ken then hits the pressure point that prevents breathing on Kaio, so the two are forced to retreat the cave. Kaio then assumes the same stance as the woman statue on the original Hokuto. Ken becomes the first person to dodge Kaio's secret fist. Ken then determines that Kaio has the original blood of the Hokuto running through his veins. He then recounts the history of two descendants of Hokuto giving birth to male heirs on the same day. And according to legend, there could not be two male heirs, which means that one of the babies would have to be killed. The two sisters would have put their babies amongst hungry wolves, and whoever survived the onslaught would become the heir to Hokuto. The younger sister couldn't bear this, so she saved her son from the numerous wolves. Now we find out that she's gravely ill, and she's not going to make it past the summertime. The older sister thusly offered up her own life so that her little sister's child could live on and carry on her legacy. Shuken, the son of the younger sister, carried on her love while perfecting Hokuto Shinken. Ryuga, lacking the love of his mother, wandered around for the rest of his days, searching for love. Therefore, someone must thusly teach them love. That is the destiny of Hokuto Shinken. Toki and Raoh always search for love, and if Kaio will sully that noble blood, then Ken will defeat him in the name of love. Kaio's blood has become mad with rage. Ken says that if he has that much hate, to hit him as much as he wants. That being said, Ken will still never forgive him. General Hyo and Kuruyasha now look to fight Kaio's demon army, so that they can protect Rin. Kaio's demonic ki overflows, as he batters Ken's pressure points. Ken does not blow up, however, and explains that Hokuto Shinken is the fist of the battlefield. Its secret lies in infinite fighting variations. Ken then destroys Kaio's fist, leaving the demon lord flabbergasted. Ken has surpassed all his friends and enemies, and he's done it with Hokuto Shinken. Pain courses through Kaio's body, as he admits to being a worthless star, completely inferior to his younger brother. After destroying the demon army, Hyo says that Kaio was left in this wretched land because of his violent nature. Kuruyasha passes away, as Bat comes in to take care of the last demon and grab Rin. Kaio begs for his mother to give him one last attack, as he's hoisted up into the air. Ken then provides the coup de grace, as blood spurts out of Kaio's mouth. And now the legend born 2,000 years ago has finally come to an end. Have I done well, my founders? Says Ken. Kaio proclaims that he is weak. So weak, in fact, that he allowed evil to influence him. Kaio feels guilt for having corrupted Rin. Just then, Bat arrives with Rin and Hyo. Hyo has unfinished business with Kaio, as the latter implores him to finish him off. Hyo says that if he had been stronger, then Kaio wouldn't have gone bad. Kaio begins to cry, saying that they should go back to the days when they were just kids. Kaio then carries Hyo's body, as they are then consumed by lava. Rin then stirs awake, as the bandages are finally removed from her eyes. Ken says that a successor for Hokuto is no longer needed, so Rin should stay with Bat and be happy with him. He then bids Bat farewell, and with the troubled times over, Ken was ready to begin a new journey in his life. Bat will now take Rin home, as he wonders what Ken will do next. Ken, who will follow in your footsteps? Juza, leader of the Dogma gang, goes to a village to brutalize the people, and he's looking for the individual that stole his food. A small boy then confesses to the theft. Juza threatens the boy, but the boy cuts off the Lord's fingers with a small knife. Ken then comes in to provide the finishing blow, and it turns out that the boy is named Ryu, and he's acquainted with Ken. What's more, he's also Raoh's son. Oh, and in the background, Juza's head explodes. Ken tells Ryu that his father was a huge man, and his passion was just as big as his body. Ken and Ryu go to visit the boy's foster parents, as we learn that the mother was quarantined due to a disease. Arrows impale Ryu's foster father, as the Koketsu clan looks to take the land for themselves. Ken takes care of the thugs, while Ryu watches his foster mother pass away due to the various wounds. Ken then implores Ryu to kill the thugs with Raoh's boiling blood and his own fist. While Ken and Ryu make their way to Kuketsu's land, Ken finds out that Kuketsu used to be in Raoh's army. Jimba, a previous warrior for Raoh, looks to take revenge on Kuketsu, but his previous men, who now work for Kuketsu, fill him up with arrows. Restraints are then placed on Ken, as he tells Ryu that he must fight this battle with his own two hands. The two are then taken to a barren field where they're expected to engage in rigorous manual labor. The prospects of escaping are next to nothing, as even Lord Balga, one of Raoh's great generals, is forced to work like a slave. Ryu then escapes in the dead of night, and he finds a boy named Shingo, Balga's son. Now Balga tells Ken that peace was achieved shortly after Raoh's death,
But then Kuketsu and his men took over, and they did so like a pack of hyenas. Now Bulga was forced into manual labor to prevent the children from getting slaughtered, and with the kids held as hostages, Bulga is forced to obey Kuketsu's orders. Ryu then implores the children to combine their strength so that they can get out of here. Ken takes out one of the guards, as he tells Bulga that Lord Raoh's son, Ryu, is leading the revolt against Kuketsu. The children successfully take out the guards, as they happily make their way back to their parents. Shingo, who is now blind, leaps into his father's arms. Bulga, the blood of Raoh has not been washed away in this age. The blood of the wolf is alive and well, says Ken. Ken and Ryu barge their way into Kuketsu's estate, as Ryu claims that he'll avenge his auntie and uncle. Kuketsu then summons a Frankenstein-like monster to put a stop to them. Hey, shit for brains, I'm your opponent, says Ken to the monster. With Ken fighting the monster, Ryu takes this opportunity to stab Kuketsu in the thigh. In the past, Kuketsu tried to suck up to Raoh, but Raoh had no time for dirty sewer rats. As payback for Raoh's insult, Kuketsu shoots Ryu with a crossbow. Now Kuketsu has access to all the food reserves, meaning that the villagers are screwed without him. The monstrous man that was fighting Ken then comes crashing down into the battlefield. Ryu, are you alive? Says Ken. Kuketsu then controls the monstrous man and instructs him to crush Ken. The monster then captures Ryu, but Ken says that since he's Raoh's child, he's prepared to die at any time. Ken then puts an end to the monster with a single punch, as Kuketsu escapes away in fear. When Ken catches up to him, he hits a wall that activates a spike trap, impaling Kuketsu and killing him on the spot. Ken then says his farewells to Bulga, as he rides off with Ryu. While collecting some branches, Ryu gets caught in an avalanche and gets knocked out. Some thugs look to take advantage of him, but an unknown warrior comes to his aid. They take shelter in a cave, as a gigantic man looks to attack them. But that's when Ken comes in to put a stop to this. Additional warriors throw chains at Ken, but he catches them all and whips them around like ragdolls. The unknown warrior then reveals that her name is Sarah. She's a princess in Sava, and she needs Ken's help with her kingdom. Sarah takes the two to her country, which was once called the land abandoned by God. Sarah's father proclaimed himself the king to bring peace to the war-ravaged land. King Assam, the father, then makes his appearance before the people. Now to keep the people's spirits up, he must constantly show off his strength, hence the reason he's fighting a bull. Though he's incredibly sick, he still manages to slice the bull in half. After his impressive display, he returns back to the castle, where he immediately collapses to the ground. Now because Ken witnessed this, Assam needs to eliminate him for the sake of the kingdom. Assam then goes in for a powerful blow, but Ken catches his attack with just his right arm. The strength leaves Assam's body, as Ken makes it clear that his fist is far superior. Assam coughs up blood, as Ken eliminates some thugs who snuck into the palace. Assam then begs for Ken to take the country into his hands, and to eliminate the three viceroys, i.e. his own sons. The eldest is Kai, the middle is Buko, and the youngest is Satora. The three brothers all make their claim to the throne, as Assam tells them to wait in the next room while he makes his decision. It turns out that each one of his sons was born under a different star, hence the reason that they're always in conflict. To resolve this conflict, he was to kill two of his sons so that the conflict wouldn't ruin the country. Yet, Assam couldn't bear the burden of killing his own offspring. I mean, who could? Sarah then pleads with her brothers to back down for the sake of the kingdom, but not one of them wants to relinquish the throne. A man named Shutar invades the country, as the three brothers go out to do battle. Shutar uses the pride of the brothers to lure their armies into a trap. He then burns them alive, as the brothers can only watch on in horror. Ken then stimulates an avalanche to douse out the fire, as he proceeds to eliminate Shutar in quick order. Assam then passes on the kingdom to Ken, as the brothers are flabbergasted by this turn of events. Leave this country, otherwise you die. Make your choice, says Ken. King Assam treated the boys equally all their life, and he did this to avoid conflict. And if they cannot agree on a true successor, then they will have to die and Ken will rule the kingdom. Satora attempts to wrestle the throne away from Ken, but Ken makes him look foolish. Okay, who's next? Is the demonstration over? Have the bird's wings been clipped? Ken allows the next brother to wrap him up in chains. He then flexes them off and flips the brother over his head with a simple flip of the wrist. Ken then finishes off the final brother, as he informs them that their father is stricken with a terminal disease. Ken then hands them a music box. the same music box that they used to hear when they were just children, and it reminds them of their childhood and how their father cared for them after their mother's passing. Ken says they don't deserve to live, but the younger brother holds him back and urges the older brothers to beg for forgiveness. Now Ken is much too strong for them, so the three of them work together to restrain him. The eldest brother then offers up his own life so as to spare the two younger brothers. And with this, Ken determines that they've learned their lesson, and they are now fit to rule the kingdom. Elsewhere, Assam begins to cough up copious amounts of blood. One of the bandits then looks to finish him off for good. Despite his condition, he still has enough strength in his body to rip the bandit's face to shreds. He then collapses to the ground, begging for his three sons to forgive him. In Assam's final moments, his three sons return to him to take him back to the castle. They tell him that Ken showed them the error of their ways, and they've now learned their lesson. Just then, a spear pierces the big brother in the backside. However, he doesn't want his father's last moments to be distressed, so the big brother acts as though nothing happened. The two younger brothers carry Assam away as the older brother stays behind. He acts as though he's watching their backs, as his father smiles on. The older brother then pulls out the spear, realizing it came from the Holy Kingdom from the far north. Ken vows to protect the king of Sava, as the older brother then collapses to his final resting spot. The two younger brothers successfully bring their father back to his throne, as the people of Sava rejoice. Assam then picks up a ball for a small child, as the small child says that him and his parents love the kingdom. Ken realizes that all the people of Sava are like Assam's children, and with this, Assam fades away in the arms of Ken, in the presence of all his children. After Ken leaves, Satoru knocks out Buko and tells Sarah that he is to take the throne. He then takes his leave as Buko vows to guard the land of Sava with his life. Elsewhere, the barbarians who attack Sava then meet up with the scouts of Blanca. The scouts take them out, as they inform Ken that the regular army of Blanca will lead an assault on Sava. And with this, Ken vows to take them out, to protect the kingdom of Sava. He makes quick work of them, brutally splattering their body parts all over the place. One of them throws some needles at Ryu, but Ken intercepts them and brutally eliminates the scout from Blanca. Sometime later, Satoru meets up with Kenshiro and Ryu. Now Satoru is a little taken aback, since he believed that the people of Blanca were gentle, good-natured people. As they make their way to Blanca, they notice that the faces of all the statues have been removed. Now it turns out a group of cloaked robes have taken over the kingdom, and now they look to eliminate Satoru. After Ken viciously eliminates them, he tells Satoru that these men have fallen victim to fanaticism. We then find out that Blanca has its sights set on Sava's princess, i.e. Satoru's fiancée. A concerned mother then brings her sick child to the Lord Baron. The Lord Baron proceeds to hold up the child, and asks the light to give it strength. A miracle then occurs, as the child is now healed. But Ken states that this was no miracle. It was all done thanks to pressure points. A woman named Luceli attempts to escape the castle, but the Lord Baron takes out her accomplice. Now Luceli is Satoru's fiancée, but the Lord Baron says that he loves her. "For you, I would drain all the blood from my body," says the Lord Baron. Yet Luceli only feels love for Satoru. Executioners then eliminate the people of Blanca, as Ken comes in to put a stop to things. Now about a year ago, Satoru proposed to Luceli, but she refused him since he didn't know how to compromise with his brothers. So she made a deal with him. If he would compromise with his brothers in the future, she would accept his ring. Baron is positively shocked that Satoru changed his ways. Baron is irate that God would do such a thing, as he then learns that Ken has arrived. Luceli shows up in front of Satoru. Unfortunately, this was a trap for Baron to make his move. Ken steps forward as Baron uses Hokuto Shinken's Shinchi Tensho. Baron strikes a significant blow, as Ken determines that it's actually Zanai Katsu. Now the reason that Baron rejects God is because when he prayed for him to save his sister, his prayers were left unanswered. She suffered until she finally passed away. He thusly rejected God. He then slashes Ken with a furious attack. In the past, Baron saved Luceli from bandits, but she claimed that she was saved by the will of God. Now Baron noticed a resemblance between Luceli and his sister, as he then wondered why she believed in God so deeply. He then worried that Luceli would also die, as he vowed to become greater than God himself to crush divine obsession. He claims that Satoru is incapable of protecting Luceli, as he knocks him back with Hokuto Gosho. Now Baron claims that Raoh once replaced God. Ken has had enough, as he proceeds to crush his hand with a simple squeeze. Baron then uses a powerful orb-like attack, but Ken easily repels it. Ken then finishes him off with a powerful energy blast. He tells Baron that Raoh knew that ultimate salvation was found through love, not violence, and that's why he allowed himself to be defeated. So Ken is implying that Raoh threw the battle, that in fact he was stronger than Ken, which is pretty interesting. Baron refuses to believe this, since he believed that Raoh was a man who surpassed God. He thusly learned from Raoh from a very young age, and he did this by stealing his techniques. He vehemently rejects all compassion, like Raoh taught him, and instructs Satora to kill Ken. Ryu then offers up his own life, and as he says this, he has tears in his eyes, and this gesture eventually breaks Baron, as he embraces Raoh's son with a firm hug. With this, Baron vows to find the proper path moving forward. He wants all future executions suspended, as he takes out his own men who disobey him. After saving the king has him tied up for public display. The king's men then fill him up with arrows. Afterwards, Ken says that he has shown Ryu the death of a great man. Later on, Ken leaves Ryu, instructing him to allow the blood of Raoh to guide him moving forward. With tears in his eyes, Ryu vows to surpass his father one day. "Farewell, Ryu," says Ken as he rides off on Kokuo. Ken then visits Yuria's grave, as Mama Ya comes to say hello. She tells Ken that Rin and Bat were to get married. However, Bat doubted his feelings were genuine, and that she in fact really loved Ken instead. Bat thusly stole her memories away, and began a journey to relive her memories of Ken. Elsewhere, Bat takes Rin to a prison cell in which she first met Ken. "I don't understand at all," says Rin. In a flashback, we see Ken carving on a piece of wood as Yuria watches him. Yuria's condition worsens, as she implores Ken to be happy with Rin from now on. In the now, Ken vows to never see them again, and says that Rin has Bat by her side. Ken takes his leave as he sees Yuria crying in the sky. Kokuo then passes away, as the scars on Ken's chest begin to glow. Afterwards, he stumbles through the desert, looking for water. Bat goes to help him out, but Ken doesn't recognize who he is. Rin hands him some water as Bat realizes that they can start over from ground zero. Bat then realizes that this must have been Lady Yuria's doing. Later on, some bandits capture Rin, as Ken tells them to let her go. They batter him around for a bit, but that's when his muscle memory kicks in, allowing him to take care of them with ease. Bat says that Rin must never leave Ken's side, as he then decides to leave the two of them forever. Mama Ya then realizes that Ken lost his memory, as Bat then officially takes off. Bat and Mama Ya then come across some men whose eyes were cut out by the Zord army. A dying man then claims that it was actually Borg. Elsewhere, we learn that Borg is part machine, and he has a personal vendetta against Kenshiro. Because Borg is blind, Bat will mark his chest with 7 scars and try to trick him. Now Bat tells Mama Ya to never speak a word of this to Ken, as he then decides to confront Borg. Borg uses a mechanical arm to harass Bat, but the young warrior turns the tables on him. Borg counters by stabbing Bat in the chest, making things quite dire. Upon returning to his old cell, Ken is flooded with a deluge of memories of Bat. Borg then places Bat on a cross as he begins to torture him. Part of Rin's memories then return to her, as they both agree to look for Bat. In a flashback, we learn that Ken was the one who robbed Borg of his sight, and he did this to prevent his dark intentions. In the now, Borg drills into Bat's shoulder, brutally wounding him. He reminisces about Ken, saying he always viewed him as a brother. Borg continues torturing Bat, as Mama Ya looks to intervene with a crossbow. Unfortunately, Borg dodges the arrow, and with no other resort, she'll now kill Bat, so that he doesn't have to suffer anymore. Just then, Ken and Rin appear to put a stop to things. Ken then makes Borg's arm explode, but Borg retaliates with a headbutt to the face. After knocking Ken back, he stabs him in the chest with a dagger. Bat screams out to Ken, as Ken's memories seem to have returned in full. "It's been a long time, Borg. I won't let you live this time." Ken breaks Bat's restraints, as he catches him before he falls. "I won't let you die. You're a little brother to me." Ken then flexes his shirt off as he proceeds to pummel Borg to mush. Surprisingly, the monstrous Borg still lives, as he looks to stab Rin in the chest. Bat catches the blade and eventually finishes off Borg for good. Rin then cries over Bat's body, as all her memories have returned. Now it turns out that it was Bat's warm, gentle eyes that has restored her memories. Bat then implores Ken to make Rin happy. In fact, it's his last wish. "I understand, I promise," says Ken. Bat laments all the mistakes he's made in his life, but Ken reassures him that he was an incredible man. And with this, Bat has no regrets,
as he fades away from existence. Afterwards, Rin decides to stay by Bat's grave, as she finally realizes that he's the one that she loves. She then realizes that Bat is still alive, and it's all thanks to Ken's pressure points. "It's best this way, isn't it, Yuria?" says Ken. Sometime later, Ken hits a pressure point on a thug's head.
Now the thug says that it doesn't hurt, but Ken reminds him that, well, you already know. He's already dead. And with that, his body explodes, and that ends the entire story of Fist of the North Star. Thank you so much for watching this video, guys. If you could like, comment, and subscribe, I would deeply appreciate that. But until the next one, I'll catch you on the flip side.